And we're live. Hello, everyone. I'm Crusader Jackaran. This is Lady Potato, and this is the Benefactor. We're here sharing DM story time, and today is character creation. How to work with your DM, how to work with the players. Let's go into character creation.
Okay, so this was a topic that I recommended for our little story times that we do, and today we're going to be focusing on a few things. It's mainly going to be about character creation, but I, for example, am going to be taking the approach of uh, the player perspective, whereas Crusader is going to be taking more of a DM perspective. We have sort of a general premise on things that we're going to discuss, such as uh, information you might need before a campaign, actually creating your character, and other backstory information, and sort of what information you can include in this backstory.
So we're gonna have a fun topic today. Can't wait to hear this. Ooh la la.
So I guess the first question I sort of had for this was, let's just talk about your favorite characters that you've played. Benefactor, what was your favorite character to play, and why was they your favorite?
Oh man, this is a loaded question. True. I have too many of them. I can name reasons why Dimitri's been my favorite. I can name reasons why Tamaya's been my favorite. I have another character named Krishna. I can say why he's my favorite. It's so many of them. Each of them is a different reason why I really love them, and so that's for me. It's really hard to pick one. Each of them are how I make characters is one of my defining things too. Is make sure that they at least share some kind of trait that is a part of me, so it makes it easy for me to play. So it's always a reason why I enjoy them, and they're usually built for the scenarios they're made for, which what makes them enjoyable. So just go over each of them in their own ways. I like Dimitri. Why he was one of my favorites to play was he was one of those very strong head forward, let's say Blood Knight type of characters. He represent my aggressive personality, where he's like, I'm just here to take things out and mess things up, But he still had that fun brotherly side to him, where those who are friends with him are brothers to him. He will die for them upon any hill, upon anything that they want to get done. He will literally go, I will fight with you till the end. Now we go into my most, well, not the most recent, because Christian will be most recent, but the one you two know of, with Tamaya's. Tamaya's represents to me my sense of justice and law. I'm not gonna say I'm a good person, as we said in other ones. I have a very evil play style when it comes to my characters for the most part. And for me, I can say I'm a very lawful person, but I also believe harsh punishment for those who want to break the law. And Tamaya's my favorite in Crusaders campaign because it was a world of pseudo lawlessness that needed to be rectified. We had these, like the start where we had these raiders attacking this campment that's just barely surviving as it is. And it created this dynamic with one of the players we had in there that was a paladin that didn't want me to kill one of these raiders who quote unquote converted to goodness, converted to a new god or whatever, and wanted redemption. It's like, no. You've killed you killed plenty of people already. You did That's not fair to the family members in them. So, this is going a little bit further into it, but so I'll talk about that a little bit more when we go into character creation methods. And then my last one, his name is Krishna Siriu. He was made for a more realistic campaign, and he was more down to earth when he lost his best friend. And he was fun to play because he was kind of a fish out of water as he left his home and moved to another place and had to make friends, something that he wasn't really able to do after losing his best friend. And it was fun to play this guy that just was really weird and awkward, very, very. Just trying to find that right word to look for here. Come on, someone help me out here. He was very. mm, I can't, depressed. We'll go with that. He was very depressed with the loss of his friend, and then trying to really make friends was a challenge at that point because that lingering loss always hovered over him. So those have been the three of my favorite characters that I've played so far.
All right, that sounds awesome. What about you, Crusader?
I'm
Tell me
thinking
about
about
some.
this. I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, all right, I have my
You can
own
just give us one
characters.
example, even.
See,
Yeah,
it's a loaded question. You know,
I
there's so
have
many.
my own characters, but I also have canon characters that I play, and I really enjoy the shit out of playing canon characters. You know, you guys have seen me play Constantine.
Do you mind if I just ask, for like the sake of discussion
Sure.
today, that we talk purely on characters of your own creation?
Yeah, that's probably a good scope to limit it to. I would say I'm thinking about all the characters, and I know your scope here is player concept, like for players, but I'm going to come at it from a DM perspective. I think the character I like the most playing is like genuinely enjoy playing is probably Wariv, who is an NPC. I typically have him in several of my campaigns as an NPC in the background in some shape or form. Uh, I don't know. I might change that answer because I'm saying Wariv, and it's like I really like Wariv. Great character, great NPC. But yeah, it's a really hard one to say like which one is my favorite. I don't know. I that's a hard one for me to answer.
That's fair, and I get it. It's kind of like picking your favorite child. You like them all for different reasons, but at the end, you can't really choose a favorite. I, on the other hand, I sort of do have a favorite, and I've talked about her a lot. Blair Price. She was a character I created for the Cypher campaign, and honestly, I think she's a great character to mention because the format that I used to create my characters was basically solidified when I created this character. After going through the process of creating characters and figuring out what process works best for me. So um, I enjoyed playing this character for several reasons. As the Benefactor noted, uh, I took some traits of my own and sort of incorporated into this character. And I like to do that with all of my characters. Just choose a few traits that I myself contain so that you can relate to this person in a way. Um, I would say that there's also traits that I like to pick in my characters that are vastly different from my own. For example, Blair Price is, well, I wouldn't say she's quite lazy or apathetic, but she definitely is the type of person to take shortcuts and to try and find easier ways to do things. And that can sometimes be at the detriment of her party, but for the most part, I enjoy this character because she even though she wasn't necessarily somebody who had a purpose, she took up the role of looking for a purpose and eventually found one. Um, I know that was kind of rambly, but like I said, it's like picking your favorite child. You can't really pick one. Did you have anything to add or have a little time to think on
Well,
that one, Crusader?
what I'm gonna say is because like I'm thinking about my character named after me right here, Crusader Jackaran. Um, I really haven't had a chance to play him in a D&D campaign, uh, but I have done text-based roleplay with the character. Um, I used to play as the character in World of Warcraft, and in both instances, I love playing that character. He's a druid. He's has a terrible backstory of his son dying and his wife leaving him, or him leaving her. It's kind of ambiguous, and then he goes off to war, and his wife dies in the war during the war because she's like going off and doing this humanitarian front thing, and for him it's like his story. What I love about his story is that it's tragic. It's like he is such a tragic backstory, but he himself is a very happy-go-lucky guy and very optimistic, very I wouldn't say optimistic, maybe not optimistic. I might be overselling that part. But he's very energetic and excited to get out there and do things because he doesn't want to look back. He doesn't want to dwell on his past. He doesn't want to dwell on any of that stuff. So he's always going forward. And he's built like a tank. So his entire philosophy is like a Rocky Balboa type, where it's life isn't about how hard you hit, it's about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward. And so I kind of take that mantra in my own personal life, where it's just you keep getting hit, keep moving forward. So I think that's where I like my character Jackaran probably the most, because he's a guy who, it doesn't matter what evil he is up against, he will take it on fearlessly.
Great. All right. So now that we've kind of talked a little bit about who our favorite characters were and why we like to play them, what information do you think is, I guess, necessary for players to know before starting a campaign? Would you like to answer this first, Benefactor?
Let's see. For me, I like to know when talking to the DM a little bit of what the world is like a little bit, but at times this is why I rather we start with the character creation method a little bit, because for me it's always depending on who it is, because some teams also give you all that beforehand, so I don't really have to add information I need to know. And then at times I create characters already like preambled, but make them flexible where they can fit into any setting. So that's why for me it's a little back and forth with that. So like with Crusader Jackaran here, usually he doesn't give too much information on the setting for his campaigns. I don't really worry too much on that, because I generally, he's like, oh, this is what the campaign's gonna be about, or you guys are gonna be doing X. Then usually I have a character that I would give to him, and we'll just work on it so that it can be included in the setting for the campaign. So I even with my cousin who also DMs for me, he gives us the setting straight out. So I already know what the setting is long beforehand. So I never really have to worry about that. And then I either make one on the spot for that campaign, or pick one that would fit, that I have already, that I thought of with a background and everything, that would fit that very setting. But I think for a lot of people, generally knowing, is it a post-apocalyptic world? The general overlay of the world. You don't need to know a deep backstory of the world or a deep knowledge of the world. But generally things like, is it going to be a Wild West setting? Is it going to be a futuristic setting? What's the general climate of the world that the players are going to be in? Again, just going back to Crusader Jackaran, like his favorite end time was a post-apocalyptic world. His other one before that was a standard fantasy world. Then there was your campaign, Lady Potato, which was a dark fantasy, one. Which, with me being told that, I knew exactly what kind of character I wanted to make right then and there when you told me that. So I think for players, is generally just what is the world itself setting like? Like the general genre. That's where I look for. The general genre of the world is
Yeah.
like.
I would say I would agree with that, and I would also like to add that I think that letting your players know the general direction, because you could say, this is a post-apocalyptic world, for example, but what generation, or not generation, what general direction is the campaign going? Is this going to be a, save the world campaign? Is this you digging through uh, all sorts of bad creatures to get to certain places, or what sort of things are you going to be doing? What sort of characters are going to fit in this setting? I would say adding certain types of themes as well as the genre, like ambition or survival, giving them those sort of like keywords as themes as well as your genre, I think is very crucial as well, just so that they know what type of goals or ambitions or anything that they could give their characters to better fit into the setting. What about your thoughts, Crusader, from either a player or a DM's perspective?
Well, when it comes to the setting, I try to draw on like, okay, what am I doing with my setting, and what do I want to have the players navigate through? So if I don't really have a too much detail to the setting, I mean, I think both of you guys are great examples, because you guys have been in most of my games, and you have a general idea to the world. Lady Potato, you were apprehensive about doing the DC Vertigo game, because you're like, I don't know anything about superheroes. I don't know anything about the magic system or fighting crime or anything like that. And I simply told you, well, do you know what the modern world is like, right? And you're like, yeah, okay. Add superheroes, but that's a background thing. The main thing here in this game is supernatural, like chupacabras, vampires, werewolves. So when you articulate things in common terms that people can understand, the players then get a better picture of, okay, this is what I'm making my character for. This is the type of world. And I think I used supernatural as an example for you, which you weren't that big into supernatural at the time. You were kind of like casually dabbling with supernatural. I know you saw Constantine. You watched the show Constantine. I don't remember if you watched Swamp Thing or not.
I did. It's a really good series for those out there. It's fabulous.
Yeah. So I gave some references to my players to be like, okay, hey, you don't have to. You don't have to watch this stuff for that game. You don't have to, but it's good material. With Star Wars, I was like, all you have to really watch is episode 4, 5, and 6. If you watch anything else, that's fine. That's all gravy on top. It's nice. But really, all you needed was 4, 5, and 6 just to immerse yourself in the world.
So, do you believe that providing your characters any sort of references to real world things, you say that that's sort of the thing that helps you guide your players in that direction? And with other settings, like for example, if I were to take up the Fear in the Night campaign, which was the grimdark setting that the Benefactor had mentioned, would you advise that I ask my players to watch certain materials that might better suit that to help them create characters?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would definitely recommend that. I recommend anyone, if you're designing a character or making a character, um, go off of some form of template. Okay. Come up with your concept, come up with your idea, and then begin to reverse engineer, begin to tweak and modify things. Um, a lot of the characters that I like, all of them have a part of me in them. You know, whether it's a canon character like Batman or Jack O'Neill, or if it's a character like that I've made myself, which is Gustav or Evelyn or who's the other character? Hal. So like any of those characters, they're my creation, but they have my inspiration. And then the characters that aren't mine, there's parts of me that I can see in them that I attach to them and I take a liking to. And that helps me bond with the world. And that's why, like, for me as a player, I want to know as much as possible about the world I'm putting my character into. I never talked about my character Carolus, but he was a character who was pretty much dropped into a sandbox. It was my first Cypher game I ever played in. I wasn't the DM. I wanted to get a better glimpse as to how this Cypher system works. And so the DM was trying to figure out how he himself could become a better storyteller. So he wanted us, the players, to create this world. So I came up with this government system for my guy. I came up with these two warring factions that are on his home world, and my guy was on one side of the war, but then he decided he didn't want anything to do with the war. He's like, I have a higher calling, some god or deity or something is calling out to me to use the secret power I have. And so he went out to do that, and was my character's introduction to this campaign or this party, was that my guy was looking for a group of people to go out on this quest and to do this adventuring with them. But that entire game was complete sandbox. My character himself, I just had to start making stuff up as we went. And it was a character not quite like any of my other characters. He was like Hal, sort of, in that he was a contradiction. He was basically a healer, but he's this giant lizard man who's a healer, who's got like hulking muscles and things like that, where Hal is like your meathead, but who's also kind of smart, even though his stats don't reflect being smart. Hal's a barbarian. He's usually strength and constitution based, but he's also kind of wise. And people don't typically think of barbarians as wise or smart. So my character Corollas was in the same vein, where he's this hulking dude, but he's not really a warrior. He was a priest. His whole thing was delivering. He was a chaplain. He would deliver prayers and basically morale boost his people.
All right. Anything else to add before we move on about anything that you think would be useful for players or DMs to know before character creation begins?
Communicating with each other as always. That's just generally it. It has to be a back and forth communication. Even if you know the setting, you still have to have that back and forth. This goes into something we talked about before, where I would work with Crusader here on what my character can and can't have, and that includes stuff for a character creation. One of the things that Tomias had gotten was the Elven Kingdom backstory, which he fitted into the world. So that's always an important part for everybody to always remember, for both DM and players. Back and forth communication of the setting and what you want to include it in the DM's world, and DMs should always be open to add player stuff to the world. As long as it makes sense. I'll try to, again, that's going communication back and forth.
I was gonna say on that note, like that's perfectly it. Like communicate with your DM. I have with you, Lady Potato, we've talked back and forth with your game, and how I had to tell you up front with how he is a slayer, so he's not allowed to have possessions. He can't have, like, getting him a shirt or giving him a loot drop that's a shirt isn't going to be an effective item for him, because he's supposed to go into combat naked. So I had to work with you, like, okay, here's a thing you could get him. You can get him tattoos he can have, jewelry he can have. He can wear all kinds of like nose piercings, ear piercings, rings. Those are things. And I have to, every time I play Hal in a game, I have to let the DM know this, because he's a character. It's like a DM will give me bracers, or they'll give me shoulder pads, and I'm like, Hal can't use those. Like, he's not allowed to use them. So it's just, you're making an item that's going to be unused in the game.
Yeah, and I think that's great, just to let your DM know, all right, this is what I want for my character. My character is not somebody who owns possessions. If you want to give him items, this is the alternative, and I think that's great.
Yeah, and like we've talked before, what's called D3, his character concept, he had to talk to me about his character concept of, I want to play a Warforged that has no emotions. No emotions. He's completely cold steel. And, from a DM's perspective, I fulfilled that. I allowed him to, I facilitated that. I allowed him to have this cold-hearted machine. Benefactor here, he had Dimitri. His request with Dimitri was, can I have a Pegasus as my mount for my level 5 mount, I think it was, or level 6. And I said, yes. However, you'll have to do a quest for it. Now, from the player's perspective, he was like, oh, sweet, cool. I'll just do a little quest and get my Pegasus back. Not realizing that with me, there's always a string attached, and it wasn't an easy quest. But he did get the Pegasus, and he did use it.
I didn't complain about the quest. I didn't complain. It was like, not even just about they told me the quest. Even doing the quest, it was like, okay, I'm fine with this. Like, I'm generally someone that, that's me personally, just lax with that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, we have to go and fight a guy for me to get this Pegasus, and we have to do it time. The time was a little bit annoying, but it was like, But what really made it annoying was the people that I was with. Half the party made it the hardest quest.
But my point in bringing that up, though, is a part of the character creation process. If a players want something, if the players want something and you as a DM are like, well, that's a little early in the game to give them something, you can negotiate it out where it's like, okay, we can have this come down the pipe. We can arrange it to happen later on. And that gives you, the DM, the ability to buffer some campaigns. So it's like, okay, I can start working on this later on. Or, if you have a story hook later on where it's like, hey, this is the perfect opportunity to bring in this Pegasus character, that it's giving you that time. On the other hand, you're also letting the player know, yes, one, I'm willing to work with you, and two, you're going to get what you want. you're going to get this Pegasus thing that you want, or this someone could say they want a dragon. They could say they want a flying cloud. Whatever it is that they want, they could ask for a witch's broom that flies. Whatever it is, if you say or add the stipulation, you have to complete a quest, or you have to do an achievement, or whatever it is that you're coming up with, that's perfectly acceptable. As a dungeon master, that's a great thing to do. I highly recommend do that, even if it's with just one player at the table. I would recommend do that with every player if possible, but not all players want to do that. Not all players are wanting to go to the full pedal to the metal with their character. Some players are, I just want to play my battle droid and I don't want to make it more complicated than that. So that would be the last things I would note on the topic of, working with your DM and character creation.
Great. Before we move on, anything else we would like to add before getting into creating characters? No. All right then. All right then. So, yeah, what this is finally all about, getting all the introductions out of the way. What is your character creation method? I have mine sort of outlined, and we can go into more of the details as we go along. But my general outline is I first come up with a concept that is going to fit the campaign that we're going to be playing. A character I'm working on right now is for a Wild West game, and it's actually going to be a Vampire the Masquerade campaign. So, with that in mind, I will take those things into account, and I came up with an idea of having my general concept being a mystical enchantress type. Somebody who is, they might take more of like a seduction route to get what she wants. She might be manipulative, those sort of things. That's kind of what I had in mind for this general concept in that time frame. I also like to go and create my character's goals. So, for example, my character is wanting to be a politician and gather information. So some of her goals would include climbing the political ladder and researching. I also like to provide what motivates that goal, whether it's a fear or something like that. So, for example, the goal itself might be climb the political ladder, but why is she doing that? Is she doing that because she wants to gain security for herself or power? Those things are important to keep in mind with their goal, because it kind of gives it a little bit of a flavor as to what that character's true intentions are. I also like to give an array of personality traits. As we mentioned, I do like to give some traits that are of my own, as well as some traits that may not be, just so that I have some color and fun to work with. And I include flaws as well, just because nobody's perfect. And I'll be honest, I enjoy playing a character that has flaws or things that are not really great about them.
Flaws are fun.
Absolutely. They sort of, and they can create contradictions in your character too, and it's fun to explore those dynamics as well. And honestly, with all that in mind, I generally have an idea of what kind of character I have, but then I usually at this point will take everything that I've worked and kind of put it into a class, and then give them abilities that are going to suit this sort of general format that I follow.
Yeah, I would say I'm not that far different. I always start off with like, okay, what's the world? And then I think of like, okay, what's the most iconic or tropey thing of that world? And I think I usually create that character first. And then from that character, I then begin making reflections off of that. So in the Wild West, I would start with the John Wayne archetype or a Clint Eastwood archetype. Like, okay, this is a Clint Eastwood character. Is he a law enforcer, or is he just a bounty hunter or desperado? And from there, then it's like, okay, so if he's the desperado, he's got to encounter, the bank teller. He's got to encounter the gaming girls. He's got to encounter the shoemaker or the horseman or stableman. And you start branching out, and then I say, okay, which of these characters do I want to play? And I think about like, okay, what type of personality would be fun to work with, and kind of play with there. Benefactor, you want to chime in?
For my character creation method, I start from two different fronts. With that, so like I said, I have some that I have already pre-made that I make pretty much a blank background. That can fit into multiple settings, and then if it doesn't work with DM, I can always choose a different character. So most cases, I start with a concept for a character. Let's see. Example again would be Tamias. He wasn't made specifically for Crusader Jackaran's campaign here. He was just somebody I had as a investigator. So I wanted to have an elven investigator that lost his childhood friend to a criminal, and I had built off of that concept and going through that built, just pretty much story writing in essence. You know what I mean? I do that for a lot of the characters I have. Sometimes I start off a class and abilities, seeing something of interest, which makes me be like, you know what? I want to try this. And what kind of concept would go good with this? Which is how Leon and Dimitri actually started. With Dimitri, he started because I wanted to try to be a Sorkinen, which was a big thing in 5e as a race, as a class combination. So I thought the concept was like, you know what? Why don't I make myself a solar? That's when I talked to with Crusader Jackaran, being an angel, make myself a solar, pretty much a child of a god in a sense. And I built the concept of him from there and how I wanted his personality and goals to be. So for me, when I do it, it's either one of those two things, and I have a whole bunch of characters I have in the back wing, and then when I get a setting from somebody, I will pick one and see how I can change and work that around to fit within the very setting and world the DM gives me. I very rarely do it based off the setting information these days. Usually I have what I want to do, and then bam, the game my cousin's running is another example of that. We're running a military sci-fi adventure. We're military personnel. I actually started because I wanted to do something similar to, I guess you say trophy, but it's something similar to a Borderlands character called the Commando class or Soldier class. So I wanted to throw drones while being a sniper. So that's how that came about, where I chose the class and the abilities, and the concept of the character came pretty much there afterwards. Some people are really finicky with that. Someone, oh, you have a concept before you go through. But I think either way works as long as you actually have a what you want the character to be lined out. I think having a character with, and this is where my main max comes in, where you have a character with a concept, but don't really have those class and abilities match that concept, you're half lacking. And same vice versa. You know what I mean? You have the class and ability, but you don't have a concept to go with. You're like, I just want to, in the sense that power game, oh, I just saw this combination is broken. My character is a broken broken character. You know what I mean? I have no real thought or concept behind him, no real goals or motivation. I just want to try this build out. I find those things so lacking instead of having that complete package. So when I go through, my method, it's one of those two things first, with the other one being second. And then from that concept, I devise based off the setting as well what I want the goals to be. I find like best case scenario, because you both know him, Tamias, his goals and motivation was to prop back up the Elven Kingdom, and his mission that he was sent out to do was find surviving elves and bring them back to the Elven Kingdom so that the elves could try to thrive in this post-apocalyptic world. And that came about because of the concept of him being investigated, as well as, we'll just make it easier, a royal knight as one of the top blades of the queen. She sent him out to go and do so, trusting him that he'll get the job done. And it was one of his big motivators throughout the campaign till we got into the full, I guess, motive of the campaign, the full modus operandi of the campaign of trying to stop the Dark God. But that's generally when I make characters. That's generally how I do their, goals and motivations. I don't really do it based off the story. I usually give them a personal motivation, because without a personal motivation, what is really driving you to do anything? And that's what I recommend anyone, both as a player character and a DM, to talk to their player characters about. Always give your characters a personal motivation. Without it, what was their point of traveling? And it's something I've talked to Crusader Jackaran about with one of our friends, where it's just like, he makes characters with no family, no friend, no nothing. It's just him in the world. It's like, how do you not kill yourself? What is it, that drives your character to even stay alive if everyone you know and love is dead. You know what I'm saying? You don't have any adopted parents, you don't have any real parents, you don't have no siblings, friends, the uncle from down the block. No,
Yeah, you have nothing. No
yeah,
friends.
nothing. How are you still alive? How are you still sane? How, like, what drives you? You know, and we're going through and talking about this stuff, and that's something I think people need to realize. And you need to make compelling character. You need to have that full want, desire, drive, all of that. You can't just have it one way. You can't be, I got this beautiful concept, but also a character that can't fulfill it.
Niraj called it out in chat here. Shadowrun 2e has a section of the manual called 20 Questions that's perfect for helping with character creation. Several of the creators for the manual were also authors who wrote fiction for it. And I remember in Cypher has a similar thing of like 20 questions. I don't recall if 3.5 has that or if Star Wars even has that. I don't think they do. But you can find all kinds of guides like that that actually are helpful and help you with your character creation. And what's this? Deletes contacts as soon as the party member dies. Oof.
But yeah, that 20 questions thing, I think that's really good. And it could be good for helping you figure out, okay, what is my goals? Or if you have that all figured out, it can even help you, I guess, deepen your character. I think it's a great tool to actually bring up in like a session 0, to be quite honest.
Well, I've had stuff like that. Where a character has completed their goals. Benefactor's Dimitri is a great character example. It's like, okay, once he got his Pegasus, what then? Like, where do you take the story from there? And as a DM, I was able to go through just different story creations and storyline plot hooks and just research and came up with different ideas as to like, okay, here's the direction to take the character if the player wants to. So all I can do is bait the hook. The player has to bite it. And if they like, hey, yeah, that's great for my character, they'll go for it. Now, sometimes what happens, interestingly enough, and to no surprise to anyone here, is you'll create a player hook or a plot hook for one player, and another player will bite it. Another player will take interest in it. And that's fine, because then you could just switch the players. Be like, okay, here, this is now your story, and you can now adventure down this rabbit hole. That's a nice trick to know as a DM. That's something you could do. Part of, I forget who said it, but like 50% of DMing is just completely improv.
I think I said it, and I think it was 40%. But yeah, you're right. 50% is probably improv. I did actually kind of have a bit of a question. You said that like when he found his Pegasus and stuff, well, what goal does he have? But my next question is, the player probably didn't just want the Pegasus because I want a Pegasus in character, at least. I would assume that the character had a purpose for collecting that Pegasus, whether this Pegasus is my friend and I want this friend to adventure with me, or I need this Pegasus to fly to this really high up place.
Well,
did you have any motivation for wanting that Pegasus, Benefactor?
That Pegasus was my bro. What? Edelweiss is my bro, man.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was something else that was different. That was something else that was different with his Pegasus and his character. Is it's much more closer to Hercules and his Pegasus than your typical Dungeons and Dragons player who, hey, I have this rare and exotic mount, but it's still just a rare and exotic mount. This was, and the party that party was completely misunderstanding it because they looked at the Pegasus as this is just a Pegasus. This is just a mount. Hey, and people were trying to jump on the mount. They were trying to do all kinds of things with the mount. They were telling him what he should do with the mount. And from Demetrius's perspective, it wasn't a mount. It's a person. And it was a really great contrast. And I would have loved to have been a player in the party role-playing with Dimitri on that, because it was like half the party had no concept that Edelweiss was a person. And then the other half was like, okay, Edelweiss is a person. And there was a small little fraction which was like, It looks like a mount, but these guys worship it like it's a person or a god. So I'm not going to mess with it. Like I'm just going to not go anywhere near it and leave it alone because I don't want to invoke their wrath, which is a safe bet. That's a safe bet.
So yeah, think of it like Tobias and Critias. It's pretty much when I have companions, they're not just a creature. They're something that has something related to the character. I think that's something that people that have companion like find familiars, things like that. Not everyone has to do it, but I think it should have some kind of attachment relevance to you. It creates a very good dynamic for the DM to also play with, as well as for you to play with as a player, having that creature there as a dynamic of your role play and how it can interact with the other players. Say, you're not with them, but it's with them, how it can interact with the players in its own sort of way.
And that was something I just remembered I wanted to say regarding Dimitri. Okay, even though the Pegasus wasn't his main quest. Okay, his main quest was trying to get back to heaven, basically, and figure out why he's here. That was his main quest, essentially. And even though the player has the choice of whether or not they're going to pursue that the entire time, Benefactor didn't seem like he was pursuing that. It seems sort of like, if I find out, it's okay. I'm in no rush to find out that whole meaning of life and everything. Okay. But me as a DM, I'm looking at how do I get these guys hooked into a story? And in that campaign, it was very adventure based. So I was coming up with story hooks everywhere. And I was letting the players decide if they wanted to bite onto them and pursue them or not. So I had like all kinds of just dungeons and encounters, random or not, that the players could bite onto and go down. And any of the players could do it, or the players could just walk right by them and ignore them. So like with the Pegasus one, it was like, okay, they achieved that. He achieved the one goal I knew he was pursuing. I knew he would go for this. I don't know if he's going to go for any of the other hooks. And that's a challenge as a DM you have to figure out is just because you have a player hook or a hook for a player doesn't mean the player is going to bite. The player might nibble and then not lose interest. You don't know. So that's, again, where talking to the player and, I highly recommend having a post-game discussion, post-game wrap-up where you kind of go over the game. That helps amp people up and helps make them excited. Niraj has something here in the chat you just said. As a DM, you've got to be good at improv. You have to deal with the unpredictable decision-making of players. You may end up with heroes, quote unquote, that decide to genocide Dugan's Hole. I get that reference. And yes, that's very much a possibility. Which I'm going to share a story. Speaking of Dugan's Hole, I will want to share a story at some point during this stream when it comes time to it. But I think goals and motivation, that's kind of a good theme to talk about, because something that all of my characters have is they have something they're trying to achieve. And typically what they're trying to achieve is something mundane and simple. So Gustav, for example, his whole agenda was get a good military career, find a wife, raise some kids. Like, that was basically his entire objective, his goal. It wasn't, I'm going to go slay a dragon, I'm going to free the entire land. Nothing like that. His goals were really simple, very basic level. Contrast to my character Jackaran, his goals were, I'm looking to restore the Emerald Dream. I'm here to just bring balance to nature. However that may be. It may be as mundane as standing by a lake and keeping the lake free from goblins.
Keeping the lake free from goblins, huh? Well, yeah. And that's what I was saying before, you're goals should be personal to you and your character. I'm not really a super big fan of having the character's goal being whatever the story is itself necessarily is. This goes to me as both a player and a DM. I like it to be where you have this goal you want to do, and this is why you're set out in the world, and whatever may happen slowly leads you towards that goal you're trying to achieve.
Well, I mean, Lady Potato, you saw it with the Vertigo Cypher game.
Yes.
Where we had superheroes and their goals, for the life of me, I don't know what their goals were as superheroes. Like I don't understand what their motivation is. I don't, and I know the characters because some of them played Ken characters. I don't know what their motivations were. I don't know what they were trying to achieve. For the most part, what I could infer from their motivations was, I am bored. I have nothing better to do. And contrast that to, say, you and your brother. Your storyline was, we're trying to find Dad.
Yes.
And from there, it spiraled out to, in Blair's case, she went from I'm trying to find Dad to I'm trying to save my girlfriend to now I'm trying to fill the role of my mentor. Like now she is Alice.
Yes, and we can talk about how, and even with how you mentioned how Dimitri got the Pegasus. Your goals, when your player characters achieve their goals, usually you expect your players, and I think that's a fair expectation, to create other goals or other things that they may want to achieve. But I wonder what your thoughts are on providing players with certain rewards when they achieve, their certain uh, their milestones in their goals. I've played in other systems, for example, the World of Darkness systems. They oftentimes give you some sort of XP reward for achieving those goals. What are your thoughts on that sort of system?
I used to do that. I used to give all sorts of XP bonuses and things like that for achieving goals. I don't do that so much anymore. I typically go with, if it's a big encounter, I give the players good loot and I give them good XP for that. So, and I try to keep the XP if possible. I try to keep the XP consistent so that the players can, if they give a good performance, they can say, okay, this game I'm expected to make 1200 XP or I'm expected to make 1500 XP. If it's a slow game, they'll be like, okay, I might make 500 XP. At any rate, they get they should be able to predict or calculate based on their performance, as long as they maintain consistency with their performance. They'll get an idea as to, okay, so this game I'll have X amount of XP. Now, I do have achievements in my games where players can do extra difficulty things or they can do an extra activity that will award them XP. I'm not opposed to giving people XP for doing something like meeting a goal, but typically I already factor that in. So that's all a part of them getting loot or a reward for, not necessarily loot, but they get a reward. It could be a contact, it could be a friend or whatever have you. That's factored in. Also, if they fight monsters or if they solve puzzles, whatever that is, whatever challenge they're up against, those are instances where it's like, okay, I've factored that in. The players are getting the reward all at one time.
Fair enough. I would say that's a fair approach. Honestly, typically when characters are achieving goals, there's usually an expectation that there's something added, whether that's XP or a position or a certain item. But I was just curious if you guys had any other, I guess, things you would give to players for achieving their goals.
Yeah, I give them more goals to achieve. No, seriously. I like to go the long-standing route. So this depends how you want to put it. Their short-term or long-term goals. I like to have all their short-term goals eventually build up to their long-term goals. So sometimes it is a reward. If the player, especially, I'll give an example. I had a player. His character name was Adrian. he wasn't sure what he wanted to exactly do, but when he did finally find that focus, he was like, oh, I want to get like an item and stuff, and these items to help me improve the character and what I want the concept to be for his abilities. So I had it set where if he went to various places and helped out the nobles there, they would reward him with an item that would complete a complete like item set for him that give him abilities, bonuses, and everything. You know what I mean? So which goes along with his long-term goal. Well, one of his choices of a long-term goal of having prestige, within the setting of the campaign. So I did something like that because he actually talked to me and we worked that out. And it was like, you do this, you will get more of the kind of items, and you also be going towards one of the goals pretty much set that you want to achieve. I had something similar in place for Lady Potatoes Rebecca, where you're gonna go and do various things, meet various nobles, and as well as sorry, when you deal with the main antagonist, which I actually want to talk about too around the end, main antagonist of the campaign, which did happen when you did get the 2 swords from that one place that you presented to the Duke to them. That was a reward, and it was something that's gonna slowly build over time. I didn't want it to be immediate, like, yeah, you're gonna get promotion immediately. There's always a process to things, especially in like a military kind of thing. So you wouldn't just always immediately get it. And the more achievements you rack up, the better it would look over time, which I had planned for you to do is to over time slowly raking more achievements. Things that wouldn't necessarily be XP or, a tangible reward, but it should be something that you as the player and your character will feel proud of having, or, even that acknowledgement from NPCs and whatnot, that
Yeah,
would be the
absolutely.
reward in itself. So it's just depending. Some players really want a physical reward behind it, or XP or something like that. And some players are also fine with metaphysical rewards, and good job,
Like
you did it.
status, or things that
Yeah.
don't necessarily have a mechanical benefit, but they might have a benefit in the social context of the campaign.
So yeah. A
All
good,
right.
sorry, I was say a good example of that is what Crusader Jackaran here kind of did with Tamias at Fort Thorville? I hate the fact that that's really the name of the place.
Hey, if you don't plant your flag, Tharvel did. He made it a point to put his name on that fort. So
Oh my gosh, that's just
it managed to stick.
oh,
I know the internal Tamias of you cringes every time someone's like, "We're headed back to Fort Thorville." It's like,
oh,
or it's like, "Oh yeah, I met you at Fort Thorville." It's like,
yes, every time it's like, why?
Because I remember that first encounter, you were like, "We are not naming it that." like we are not naming it that. And then sure enough, some random freaking civilian is like, Fort Thorville. Oh yeah, we're from Fort Thorville right there. It's like, you win this round, Thorville. You win this round.
But yeah. So we went to meet the heads and everything. They knew who we were since we saved the place. We didn't get any real physical reward from them, anything like that. But we had what you guess you call renown with them. So it was
Well, you did actually get a physical reward. Like they were willing to give you guys free shelter.
We had a ship.
What? They're still willing to give you shelter. All right. Whether
I
you
count
guys
that
use
under
it or
renown.
not, whether you use it or not, is entirely up to you.
You know what? Fine. I'm gonna count that under renown though. It's like oh yeah, we know you guys helped us. Yeah. Whenever you're here, we'll give you free shelter. Okay, even though they tried to juice the ever living, heck out of me.
And that's true. You guys, I would say it was a renowned status because they were willing to trade with you. They were willing to give you high praise. And because you were competent people, they were actually willing to give you guys intelligence and knowledge just about things in the area that might interest you, things that might benefit you if you wanted to dig even deeper or further into it.
They just had to ruin that relationship. They wanted to juice me. I'm like, do you know who you're talking to right now? Never forget those advisors to Muhammad over here. I'm like, you're just gonna let them juice me after all we done? Is this gonna do? You're gonna juice me for money and stuff. Okay. One criminal got killed, and it's just like, yeah, we want massive payment. Massive what?
Well, you have to pick up the setting and the environment of what was going on there, right? Because, and this is something to note, these guys started off in a survival situation. They started off with, okay, these are a bunch of survivors in a camp. They're nomadic. They're trying to survive. They're now in a fortress. It's not a very good fortress. It's a crap hole of a fortress, but it's still a fortress. And they now have, they're starting the operations of water. They're starting the operations of growing their own crops and plants. And so with the establishment of a civilization, they start creeping into the territory of bureaucracy. And that's what was going on there, is these guys are now starting to formulate into a form of government. And with the government, you now have to deal with special interests. Now, that was very small level of government, but it's still on the level of like a local township, where you have people who have different jobs and different tasks. And if you couldn't read the room with that, Mustafa really didn't care for the politics of it. Like,
Yeah, no, it was definitely the advisor. That's why I wasn't angry at him. Even as somebody, like, I got that situation as somebody, understands bureaucracy. But at the same time, that's why he kept looking at Mustafa and not them, because it's just like, so is this how you're going to play your hand? You're going to just let them do the talking? And that's why they getting like agitated. Somebody is just like, you're not going to try to strong arm me over this. This is not a war you want.
Well, yeah, like I said, that was some of the environmental things that were going on there. And Mustafa's best bet was to try and ease things along. But as a DM, I'm over here like, okay, here's the world evolving, here's the world changing, and indicator to the players, like, you guys are making changes to the world, but you're also in that particular setting and instance, it's like you're making the changes to a world of corruption. So, these people are going to fall to corruption because they don't have any values. They don't have any of those guiding posts to keep them astray, keeping them from falling astray.
But yeah, that was a great situation there. And that's something, again, with rewarding players for achieving their goals and many things like that. Like I said, renown is a great way. It doesn't always have to be a physical item, because once you start always rewarding players with physical things, they're now going to expect that whenever they do something.
Yeah. Well, that's why, like, in my Star Wars game, I have titles. I give the players titles, and the titles have some form of usefulness. Effectively, mechanically, they are basically just words written down in text. They don't mean anything. However, how I'm using them is, if you have your title announced, or your badge, quote unquote, if you have that on display, in Star Wars, they have the ability of called reputation. You can use your reputation to leverage your title, or your title and reputation combined can leverage you in a situation. If someone does like a data pad scan, or if you give them your ID, these things can factor in to whether someone thinks you're a person of value or not, whether they think you're a farmer, a weapons manufacturer, just a simple pilot, or if you're a bodyguard, whatever it is that you do. Someone somewhere might find interest, they might not. But what I do is I have it so that as a reward for doing certain things in the game, I will, mainly achievements, I'll give players titles or names, badges. And that to me is a perfectly acceptable reward. Players don't typically value them as as much as they value something more hardcore, like, hey, here's some skill points, here's some ability points, here's a magic item. Those things players value more often than here's the title of manager.
Because some players just they don't know how to use it. And if they don't know how to use it, which we told before, they'll just be like, "Yeah, I'm just throw this out there. This serves no purpose. I don't know how to use it. Then what's the point of me having it?"
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you gotta learn though how to throw your weight around when you have a title. You gotta learn to throw that weight around, man. Like, see this? See this above my head? It's a title. That's me.
Yeah, but like in that vein, I've been in the situations with several of my characters. I mean, in the campaign on Thursday that you and I dropped, that one's a great example of me as a player having knowledge and insight and just knowing my character wouldn't do anything with it. So I'm not going to do anything with it. I'm going to just sit back and not act on it. And the other players at the table are also like, well, my character wouldn't act on that. So then they don't. And that's where you get into your wizards that don't do wizardry, your blood hunters that don't do any blood hunting, your rogues that don't do any lock picking. Like that's where you go into that territory.
I do like to say, like, I mentioned character concept before, and you brought up, your rogue not doing rogue things, but I like to view my characters as not like they're not like a paladin in the world. They're a knight. They might do knight things. So, I mean, some of those things, like let's say the rogue who's not lockpicking, maybe they're a rogue who didn't particularly take that trait because they believe themselves to be, more of like a bardic type character. And I know that you could just make a bard, but I know that some people create those kinds of variants in characters. So, but I hear what you're saying. People who generally will take up certain roles in the party, and I think it's important to let your DM as well as your fellow players know what sort of role you're taking, both in combat or socially in the party.
I'm glad you brought that up, because let me look for this, because I wrote it down. I sent it to when we were finishing the Thursday game. We dropped out of that, and I explained this phenomenon to Benefactor here. And yeah, so we have a wizard who didn't do anything wizardry. Okay, he effectively was like, okay, I'm just here being a wizard that doesn't do any wizardry. I don't have a familiar. I don't have Leoman's tiny hut. I don't have identify. I don't have magic circle, detect magic. And as I'm going through these lists in game, I was going through these lists with this guy. Like, do you have this? Do you have this? Do you have this? No. And I'm over here scratching my head. What the hell kind of wizard are you? As far as I could tell, the only wizard spell you have that makes sense is Misty Step and Firebolt.
A blaster wizard, basically.
Right. And I'm just like, I don't understand what you're doing. I don't. Like, you made this character as a player. I'm looking at it as you made this character with no concept or regard to anyone else in the party, let alone anything about this campaign that you're going to be running. I don't understand it. But I explained it to Benefactor here as it's the World of Warcraft problem in 5e. And some small context to World of Warcraft. Okay. If you played World of Warcraft back in 2009, 2008, 7, I would say even as far as 2014, I think 2014 is when they released Mists of Pandaria, which destroyed the game. When you played it, everyone's role was at the table for a reason. the agenda, the objective of every raid party, every party, a 5-man party, was to have diversity. It was to have some mix and matching of elements and mix and match of players so that they could have something that could counter the enemy, because the enemy could have anything. And the game was so well balanced that, okay, if you had a mage in the party that did damage and you had a priest in the party that did damage, they both didn't have the exact same abilities, but in the general vicinity, they had abilities that could work off each other. All right. So like a mage could polymorph something into a sheep for crowd control. So that eliminates the enemy's toughest unit. Just boom, he's off the board. Then from the priest side, they could shackle undead. Well, if you're in a dungeon that is undead, then okay, polymorph is a great alternative. But if you don't have a mage in the party, you have a priest, and the priest can then shackle undead, that same target, so it eliminates that heavy hitter off the table all the same. All right. Well, fast forward to today, and this is also how Dungeons and Dragons was. Dungeons and Dragons was very much the same. But fast forward to today with 5th edition and World of Warcraft, how it is now, polymorph is probably given to several other characters that can do the exact same thing, no difference. Shackle Undead is given to 5 other characters. It makes no difference at all. Everyone can do it. And that's what I see is in 5e. It's like, I'm going to play a rogue, but I want to play a healing rogue. And D&D's answer is, oh, well, that's easy. Just do this. There's the rogue class that specializes in healing. And all of the classes do this. And in this game, we had a warlock, a healing light warlock, who's also a monk, I think. We deciphered, Benefactor and I figured out. We had a monk who was also a rogue. And we had a monk who was also a ranger, I think. Or we have, I don't remember. It was dumb. It was dumb. Okay. But the point I'm trying to make here is, and there's multi-classing involved in here, in this. And that's fine. I don't have a problem with multi-classing. But these guys are trying to do everything, but also do nothing at all. Because how 5e is designed is to basically give everyone's character archetype the ability to do anything. And there is no real niche that's added to these characters. You know, Eldritch Knight is a great example. It's like, oh, you could be basically a fighter warlock or a fighter sorcerer or a fighter wizard. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But it's like you can be exactly like them, but you're more of a melee fighter. So you're more like a Death Knight. And it's like, okay, that's a cool concept. Don't get me wrong. It's a cool concept to explore and go down that avenue. But now you're getting rid of the viability or the interest of someone wanting to play a wizard, because they're looking at it as, oh, well, we have spells covered. We don't need spellcaster anymore. And this is, I think, an unintended consequence of this system. Making a ranger that's capable of just nothing but spellcasting. It's like, I'm playing the ranger for a reason. If I wanted to play a spellcaster, I'd play the spellcaster. I don't get it personally. So that was something I wanted to bring up while we're talking about character creation. That's a great little peeve of mine, where it's like people trying to go outside their lane. Stay in your goddamn lane. Your lane is, hey, I'm a ranger. I do the whole ranger thing. I'm not a spellcaster. I get some spells, sure, but they're foresty spells. I'm a paladin. I do some paladining shit. I kill stuff. I smite the bad guys. You don't come to me, my paladin. Don't come to me and be like, hey, we need you to do range DPS. No, that's not my job as a paladin. My job isn't to go around range DPSing things. It can be fun to explore, but that is, in my opinion, that is something for the DM to work out with the player, not for the systems like Dungeons and Dragons to just give to the player.
Okay. I think I understand what you're saying. It's like the idea that when, you know, you're starting a game, everyone tells you, "All right, I'm playing the paladin, this person's playing the cleric, you know, this person's being a fighter." And we all have like this general idea of what those classes sort of mean, what they can do, right?
Yeah.
And what your problem is that when people aren't, I'm going to assume that they aren't explaining that, you know, maybe this fighter, they are an eldritch knight and they have a little bit of spell casting, right?
Well, no, I think it's more so Dungeons and Dragons itself. I think this is a developer problem. The developers, because if you go back to 3.5, I don't recall of the Eldritch Knight existing in 3.5. You might be able to find something of a prestige class for it. It might exist, but that's a little bit more nuance. In 5 or 3.5, to get a prestige class isn't as simple as, oh, I'm just, when I hit level 3, I instantly become this thing and I get all these abilities. It's okay, I have to level my character a specific way so that I can actually unlock that prestige class. And if you're doing that, if you're building towards that way, you have time in the game to indicate that's what you're doing. And you have time in the game to negotiate with the other players, to negotiate with the DM. This is how I'm building my character. How 5e does it is you hit level 3 and wham, you get all of this stuff just suddenly dropped into your lap. And all of a sudden, you're now this thing that is conceptually, you now replace, say, the wizard.
Right. But that, I think that that can be solved by simply just talking to your party. You know, if you've got someone in the party who's a wizard, maybe you decide, you know what, instead of playing the Eldritch Knight, I might go Battle Master, just to, you know, not step on anybody's toes. I think that's not so much a developer issue as that is an issue with just communicating with your party. Seeing, or, you know, if you want to play the Eldritch Knight, you talk to the wizard and be like, okay, I want to do this. Maybe I don't want to have the same spells as you so that you and I can do different things, or that you and I can synchronize and create, you know, combo moves. I think that
Well,
that's a problem that can simply be
His
solved with that.
complaint is a system complaint. His complaint is that especially over time, the subclass features start to intermingle where you're gaining things from other classes from the
Yeah.
subclass. His thing isn't so much on the play DM side; it's more on the system side.
Right.
That's his overall complaint. Is that
Yes.
it's homogenizing slope. Like
Yeah,
barbarians now have the sorcerer wild magic subclass.
yeah.
In a sense.
That is weird, and I don't really like that either. But I'm just saying that there are ways that you can kind of you navigate or work around those things, even if you want to use,
oh
you
yeah,
know, those really weird things. Maybe you want to be like a barbarian that does those things. If you have a good concept that works with it, that's all I'm saying. Is that
yeah,
it can be solved at your table.
you know, I get the idea. Like, it, I don't know if either of you guys have had the idea. I know I have, of creating a game where it's only paladins. You're only allowed to have paladins. It's a paladin crusading party.
Yes.
Okay. Fun concept, fun idea. But where you hit a snag is, okay, what do you do when you come across a spellcaster? All right, or a spell-based puzzle. Okay. Like, paladins aren't equipped typically to deal with magical puzzles. And so you come into this thing where you're like, well, how do the players get around it? Now, there's a dozen different ways you can get around that. But what the developers have decided is, well, okay, how about we make a paladin class that's also half sorcerer? And what if we come up with another paladin class that's also half wizard? And to me, it's like, no, fuck off with that. Like, just fuck off. Okay, leave the different classes alone. And if I want to have my straight paladin campaign where there is no sorcerer or divine sorcerer paladin, If I don't want that, don't you come up with a solution to be like, oh, well, here's what you do. You just play this subclass of paladin, and you don't have to multi-class into sorcerer. You just play this one class of paladin, and you achieve the sorcerer anyway.
Yeah. I mean,
I know,
I would,
I'm probably, you guys probably disagree with that, but to me, that's ultimately the problem I see with a lot of these classes is the overlap. It's the fact that, as he's saying, they're homogenizing. It's
Yeah.
like, what's the difference between a paladin and a rogue then? Well, the main difference is just the hit points. Okay, so if it's just the hit points, what's the point? And you know, we're people are talking about the different terms and definitions that they're changing in D&D. They're changing race and species. You know, okay, but it's as I'm seeing it from my perspective, I'm seeing it trend more and more towards watering down the classes, watering down everything. So it's like, why even have a class? Just get rid of the class, because it doesn't mean anything. You're just a person and you accumulate these skills. And this is why also like Cypher is appealing to me, because Cypher is basically, okay, you don't need a class. Class don't really exist. It's more so you're a person and you can identify however you want to identify.
And I don't agree, disagree. I personally have not really ran into a too big an issue with that. I ran into the different issue where just like a player comes with the concept and everything and works with me for that concept and then turns around and doesn't use anything to do with the concept that they came up with and just kind of like are off in the four winds, or as you like to say, off in the wild, in the woods and everything, just doing God knows what. It's like, you asked for this concept, you made this character, you wanted this stuff so you can fulfill the concept of the character, and then you kind of just throw it away. You know what I mean? Like, what is your character at this point? And we had a play like that in one of your games where they came to us with this whole concept. They wanted to do this. I took a step back. I'm like, this is what you want to do? I will let you be the big man on that. And they turn around and then kind of want to step into the toes of everyone else and ignore their own concept, where they come barging in looking for magic. Or I want to do a ritual. It's like, yeah, but the ritual is the thing that we do. We have those. Wait, but this is, you don't have ritual casting. I will get ritual casting. I thought you wanted to do that though, that none of us is doing for a reason, and then turns to a gun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a great example of what I'm talking about as well, because it's like, that's an example of, okay, the game with 5e, it makes it so that it's encouraging of grabbing all these low level abilities and these low level archetype things, such as Warlock, freaking Warlock. And it's like, okay, I'm just going to go right into Warlock and put a few points into it, and now I can do more. Like, that, to me, that is exactly what I'm talking about, of going outside your lane. And I get what Niraj is saying here. I differ somewhat on the topic. Stay in your lane is actually antithetical to creativity and circumstance. Not everyone fits in a small box, but I do understand not destroying every convention. And
it's the social contract. It's the idea that, like, if you're playing the rogue, everybody else in your party is going to let you do your rogue things. And that's a very, I guess, easy way of putting it, but it's just sort of the social contract that, like, if you were playing the wizard, you're going to be the one that's doing the ritual casting. It's that idea, I think, is what you're trying to say, right?
yeah, that's fairly accurate. And it's like, as I've said before, if someone's playing a rogue, they're there to do rogue stuff. They're there to lockpick. They're there to steal stuff. They're there to sneak around and talk to people, talk to shady people. That's a part of the fun and excitement of playing a rogue. If you're playing a fighter, well, you're typically looking to brawl. You're looking to get into a scuffle with someone at some point. That's the general experience to that character. That's what you're looking for. And if you don't include any of that, if you remove that, you're kind of like, okay, or if you give that to someone else, that's actually more what we're talking about. If you give that to someone else, which is removing it, in my opinion, you're striking down someone else's creativity, in my opinion. Because it's like, all right, now that person doesn't get to experience that whole trope or that whole thing. And now that they haven't experienced it, they're now feeling like, okay, this whole experience is kind of lackluster. It's not as grandiose as I was hoping it would be, or it's not what I was expecting. Whereas when you talk to players about their characters and what they do with their characters, they tell you how excited they are and how great it was that one thing happened or another. I just got done talking to my players about my Star Wars game this past Sunday. And when you hear them talk about the various things that are going on, the things that are going on in their head, their inference of events as they unfolded, little moments that happened, you get the idea, okay, this was a happy experience for them. This was a good thing. And like that's what you aim for. Okay, that's what you aim for. And so like I said, I'm going to go back on that whole homogenizing everything. And it's like when you have everything that is the same, nothing matters. Okay, if you treat every character exactly the same, nothing matters. And it's also why I like the idea of heroes and templates and letting people define themselves, letting them have their own uniqueness. And, as much as a player might say, like, when you get down to it, right? When you boil down all character creation in players, their concept comes down to, I want to do great things. And that's a part of why I said earlier, like my character, I put his goals, I put their goals always down to something mundane and simple. Because most people, their goals are for their character, I want to do something awesome. I want to be the guy flying the X-Wing that blows up the Death Star. I want to be the guy who charges the castle, slays the dragon, and kisses the princess to wake her up from her magic spell. Those are things that players want for their character. And I look at it as, okay, there's a whole bunch of avenues you can walk to get to there. All right. But what makes you unique is the tools you have. So you don't have the mirror shield. You don't have the master sword. You don't have the weighted boots of magnetism. That to me is the part that makes it interesting.
I just want to say, I just want to be a merchant, but I do seriously. I have a 5 cents on that. What I consider staying in your lane is different, but I'm gonna say this. I am the guy that when it comes to just now in general going to joining parties, for the most part, I try to be versatile. I mean, have a focus, but I try to be versatile to cover any issues that could arise. But for me, I try to, in quote, stay in lane, which is going to how I feel stay in lane is more for me, as in don't become a spotlight hog. And that's the problem with a lot of people that have characters that can do everything and anything or try to make characters like that. They tend to end up being the spotlight hog, or they tend to
be the opposite, where they're just the person that does everything and they're not really good at anything.
I mean, wasn't even go down that route. That does happen. It's a little bit harder in 5e. I was actually gonna say more so they end up kind of. I kind of lost my thought there. They kind of end up more so in that position from being a spotlight hog. They end up at times being. I really lost my thought. Crap. No, it's not your fault. I literally just thought
they end up in a position where they're the jack of all trades, master of none, or they end up in a position of I can do everything, and
right. Let me be everywhere and do everything. Or you failed this, I'm gonna do it now. And it's like are you able to do this? That was my train of thought there. Thank you.
Yeah, I was gonna say because like you saw that with Dimitri, and you were like that with this Thursday game. You're like, I am going to make the game so difficult and so hard for everybody else that it's going to kill the party, because my character is so overpowered and broken and the DM isn't ready for it, that he's going to scale up the encounters for me. And in doing so, it's going to get everyone else killed because no one is on my level. That's a dangerous route or dangerous line you got to walk on the other hand of it.
It's like, oh, it's a fire. Well, for me, it wasn't so much like to make it harder, but it's like I'm gonna trivialize so many things, which technically makes it easier for the party. It makes it harder for DM, which is then gonna end up making it harder for the party because the DM, especially if they're not experienced, not gonna know what to do. Because I'm like, I literally like the flame thing. I'm like, I'm a giant frog. I can just put them on my back and then jump into the fire, take that damage where they don't, and then just let them hop off. And like, okay, or is water we got to swim across. That's a general thing with Druid. I'm just gonna swim. Worst case scenario, what if I can fly now? Oh, I'm just gonna fly us over this death trap. It's gonna eventually, but that's a Druid thing. You know how to handle Druids in their shape shifting.
Well, as Niraj says, the spotlight hog tends to go from wanting to be the knight that kisses the princess, but ends up being Don Quixote, who the guy who thinks a hooker is a princess and ends up knocked out by a windmills. Like, yeah,
Pretty accurate.
I mean, we saw that with all three of us saw that in our game with the End Times, where players doing changing concepts and changing ideas and interpreting things. One of the great ones that we talked about a lot, we joke with each other about, is I'm not going to use the chaos bullet, and then the very next round I'm going to use the chaos bullet. Literally one round apart, I'm not going to use it, and then I'm going to use it. So, that's exactly what I see from people who, I don't necessarily say it's all spotlight hogs. I don't think that's a spotlight hog thing, but what I see from spotlight hogs is they tend to go the route of, I want to do everything. And in doing everything, you as a DM just have to stop them and be like, okay, when are you going to have time to do any of that? Because it's other people's turn. And, as a DM, I typically, if I come across a spotlight hog, I typically lock them down. I do what I can to lock down. Because, like, spotlight hogs, if you can identify someone's a spotlight hog, you could throw everything at them, and it's great. Just throw everything at them. Just let them deal with it. I don't know how you're surviving or dealing with this. Just throw it all at them and let them have a meltdown as they try to figure out what exactly they have to do. Because, again, they're in the spotlight. So their entire mentality is, okay, how do I solve this? And that's what gets them bogged down. And then you give other people things to do. And while they're dealing with their own issues, they completely forget that everyone else has their own issues. So then they're like, oh, crap, I got myself into this and I don't know how to get out. And we saw that in my Cypher game, Lady Potato, where
I know who you're talking about. I know exactly who you're talking about.
Would want to do everything. They get into a situation where, okay, you wanted to do everything. Now you're doing everything.
Yeah.
And your solution is, okay, I'm going to tell other people what to do. Yeah. And the other people are like, well, I can't do that. I that's not my skill set. That's not my toolkit.
All right. Well, there was something I kind of wanted to, I guess, mention to sort of put a cap to this topic, I guess. I think that the greatest way to avoid this is to identify what your character's strengths and weaknesses might be. What do you offer to the table, and what might you be missing as a character that you might need companions to help you out with? An example, Sylvanas, she's a very good talker. She's a caster, but when it comes to a physical fight, she's definitely not the person for it. So part of staying in your lane is identifying what is my character good at and what can other characters do better than me. And it's not to say that we're getting in the situation where it's like, oh, well, because I can't lockpick, I'm not going to even try to lockpick, even though I'm the only one here. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily to say that I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought now. Jeez, guys.
You're
But
okay. You're okay. You're on track. I know what you're trying to say,
yes.
and I was going to point out that in my End Times campaign, okay, the last fight with the witches. All right, Sylvanas, as you guys were inferring, okay, Sylvanas was in an encounter there where she was supposed to tank. Okay, because if you recall, one of the spells, one of the magic blasts that they did
Mage
is
armor. Resistant to mage armor and increase your mage armor or something like that, right?
it was if the person has mage armor active, it does half damage. So, and it was a heavy blast, like it was like a powerful hit. But again, if it's mage armor, it reduces that damage significantly. And so, like that told you guys, okay, we have to have a mage tank this chick because you can't unless you're going to put mage armor on everybody, and then you're wasting spell slots for no reason. But that's an instance of okay, stay in your lane, but do something a little different, and that comes from the DM. The DM gives the players that ability to be creative and give them a puzzle that they can creatively say, okay, I know the traditional conventional way is we don't have our wizard tank or our warlock or our mage tank, but this is a circumstance where that's not that conventional system of thinking isn't what should work. We have to do something different. We don't have an arcane trickster, in other words, who can cast mage armor on himself.
Yeah, that was my, I guess, last point on that. But I guess the last thing I wanted to talk about as far as character creation is creating backstories. First and foremost, what information do you think is necessary for a player to provide the DM to create a backstory? I think that some general information would be like who you are, who you know, some conflicts that have happened in your past or that may still be ongoing. I think those are generally the sort of things I look for, and I also like to include, uh, for example, the flaws aspect that I already discussed. I like to add flaws that can be reflected in the backstory. So, for example, if I'm taking, Blair being lazy, well, how has that affected her in the past, right? Those are the
Yeah.
kinds of things I like to use to sort of draw inspiration for creating my backstories and creating compelling characters in general.
Well, that all goes into like personality quirks. It goes into like what's your thoughts on what makes your character good and bad. Um, my brother's character for Star Wars, he summarized it as his character likes guns and he's a really good pilot. And so with that, it's like, okay, those are those things. So that indicates he's got skill, but then it throws it to something else. It's like, okay, he didn't put in experience. He didn't put in charisma. He didn't show it. He didn't put in their personality as in like he's got a likable personality. Okay. Those are indicators that player design and concept come in hand. So like what I would suggest is start off with basically what your character is good at. And then think about, okay, what's his weak point? I don't know much about it. I'm not going to go too much onto this topic because I'm ignorant of it. But when people were telling me about One Punch Man, the anime, they were making a big deal about, oh, it's such a great show. It's a great show. And the on the nose thing with One Punch Man is he defeats all of his opponents in one punch. And when someone first brought this to me, they were saying, "Oh, it's not what you think it is. It's a really great show where the character depth and all this stuff." And I was like, "Right, it's a good show because it's about character." And they were like, "Yeah, how do you know? Did you see it?" I was like, "No, it's just I know the premise. The premise is this guy can knock out anyone." Well, I'm not going to watch a TV show if all it is the good guy walks up and punches some dude. The show's over. Like that's not what's compelling about Superman. What's compelling about the characters is the circumstances they get into and then how do they solve them? You know, that's what's interesting. And I take the same approach with character creation. It's like, okay, Jack is a druid. Okay, that's okay. But how do you make it interesting? Well, he's got a tragic backstory. He lost his son, lost his wife, and okay, not that's kind of stereotypical stuff, but okay, what's his motivations? Well, he's got friends, he's got companions, and his friends and companions are out carrying on the mission of their countries or their monastery, and so he's just like, hey, I'll tag along. I like the jib of your jab. I like the cut of your cloth. You know, I'll hang out with you guys. You're fun.
For me, on the flaws topic for the backstory, I like my characters' flaws to also be their strengths. So like they mirror each other. The thing that makes him strong is also things that show his weaknesses. One aspect of that you could say was my character Dimitri, where one of his strengths is his ability to just do as he pleases, you know, with his personality. And you know, if I want to hit you, I'm gonna hit you. Let's put it this way. You know, he's very straightforward, but that leads to issues where we got into it with I believe some noble. I can't remember if he was a noble, and I remember he had a castle. And I attacked the guy because I ain't like his that brat's mouth, even though he looked older than my character. I ain't like the brat's mouth that he was mouthing off. So I attacked that NPC, which then caused a bit of an issue with other NPCs now coming in, fighting us, and kind of causing, you know, an issue go on. Just an example, you know, it's something that takes his strength and makes it a weakness. Same with Tamias, things like that. You know, I like their strength to be weakness. So it's not something that's glaringly obvious what their weakness is, but if you can tell, then then you know where their bad points lie. Even with Tamias, which was Suda was a great cover for him at times. Where there's times about Tamias would get stuck, especially on surprisingly the the human interaction part, where the fucking excuse me, sorry, Warforged Pseudo would actually try to like cover that and come in with, you know, something hilariously random, which ended up, you know, saving him from that terrible interaction that he gave. I'm trying to remember the exact thing. This is when we went into the past.
It might have been the past, or when we. No, wait. I was gonna say the dwarf camp, but that was me who handled that in character. Was the social interaction part? But yeah, I think it was Pseudo who did it because he was disguised as like a human, even though he was Warforged.
Yeah. So for me, you know, a lot of my characters, I kind of make their strength and weakness synonymous with each other. Like within that strength, you know, there's a glaring problem there with them.
Yeah, I would say Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, because it was a two-part question. Because you talk about the flaws and you add information to the backstory contain.
Right.
I was gonna go to that part with. Again, with me, it's the backstory I try not to make too elaborate. This is why I generally don't name names very hard unless the DM tells me that, you know, they want particular character with a name in it. I will leave that out. I may make a general person of relation like mom, dad, sister, friend, and let the DM fill that part in. So for one, it also leads to a surprise for me and allows the DM to fit a character that they already have that will fit that precise narrative and not have to make a big change. So when you get too specific, as we talked before, you sometimes limit the DM and then they have to make a lot of movements around to have that particular character you named and pretty much gave its own little story with into the world, where I like to make it easier in the DM. Where just like, I have a mother and father. I might be like, this is their employment, but I'm not gonna give him name. I'm not gonna give him the hard personalities. I want to be surprised and make it easier for the DM to come up and do that stuff. So they may have that relation, especially when it comes to like friends as well. So I try to keep that kind of stuff out. My backstories generally contain information on what caused my character to reach this point. That to me is the main information that my backstory should contain. What series of events led my character to this point that we are starting at? And from that's how I go about it. It was the same for Dimitri. It was the same for Nicholas, as Jackaran members, and it was the same for Tamias. Where I did the backstory was that it's literally a series of events happened in my past that has led me to here. And within that, it's maybe a little bit of what my future goals may be. The only time I've gotten a little bit really specific is again because I worked with Crusader Jackaran was again the Elf Kingdom stuff when we got into the campaign and then worked to add the little flares I wanted for the character, which again goes into talking with your DM with the backstory as you're going on it and going with them. This was great what Assassin Zero is stuff is for. You talk with them and you both can work at it where maybe there is something specific you want and see how that works with them and see if you guys can get that good middle ground that you both are happy with.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I really do think that that's all great, and I like to use a lot of the same techniques. Crusader, did you have anything to add to that?
Well, I was to say that's as from the DM side, I love that he does that. Benefactor he's talking about here is take notes, people. I love that he does that because he gives me a lot of room to work with his characters. I don't feel pigeonholed into his characters. His character Demetrius, it's sad that I haven't gotten a chance to really complete his story arc because I had some really fun stuff for him. But what I was gonna say is with the strengths and weaknesses part, that's a great gimmick or cliche that is really, in my opinion, underused and underplayed. Not enough people play up that fact of their strength also being their weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about Vertigo Cypher again, where some players just didn't want any weakness, and it's like that's where you come into a problem where it's like, oh, I have a completely rounded character with no weakness at all. And that's a point where it's like, okay, are you playing a video game? Like, is your mentality of this that I'm playing a video game, or am I actually engaging with people and I have a dynamic character here that has their own motivations and their own agenda that they're ebbing and flowing with? So that's something that's what I would say on that note. Because with my characters, I look to have a weakness, and typically with my characters, it's a personality flaw. Almost all of my characters, it's some form of a personality flaw, because my characters aren't going to look at their toolkit and say, oh, well, I don't have the ability to do this. It's usually comes down to a personality flaw, because if it's not a personality flaw, in my opinion, if it's not a personality flaw, then my characters typically, they don't typically have a lazy streak in them. Jack is the exception. Jack is lazy. They would have the mentality of, okay, then let's find someone who can do this thing. Hal is the great example of that. My character Hal. If someone's like, oh, we can't do this, Hal's take is, okay, let's find someone who does. To him, it's simple math. Where Jack would be like, I guess then we just give up because, no one has the ability to do this thing. So that's where I look at like the flaws, strengths, and weaknesses. That's how I would tie that in with character development, is make it a personality flaw. Make it something where your character either doesn't care or your character doesn't have knowledge of insert field of specialty. That's how I look at it. Or your character has a weakness. I'm right now writing a story with Batman where his weakness is with his romantic interest. It's like, that's a vulnerability that he's having, and he has to acknowledge that. He has to understand, okay, you're going out into missions with a romantic interest. You now have a glaring weakness every time you go out. Are you okay with that? And what do you do when that weakness gets exploited? So, that's a fun thing that I enjoy writing.
Now, do you think flaws or weaknesses are things that characters should aim to overcome? Or do you think that those
that's a good question. I think some of them, yes. I think some of them, no. Personally. Now, what do you think,
Circumstantial.
Ben?
I actually knew you were going to ask. Circumstantial, and it depends. Like it's a lot of things. It depends on the concept of the character itself, and again, what their strengths and weaknesses are. You know, 'cause sometimes it could be a good thing to overcome weaknesses because it's the character arc thing where you have a problem and you're going through the 8 stages of a character arc of a story. You know, that generally you do overcome this weakness and you find a newfound, how would they call it, a newfound path or whatever in life. It's been a while since I read that book, actually. I should go back to that. The journey, but I personally subscribe to the different one. I really wish I could remember the name of that book too. Jackaran, if you know it, please help me out here. It's the instead of doing the 8 path story of a hero, I like the character arc, the 3 character arc, where it's a positive character arc, neutral character arc, negative character arc, kind of philosophy. With a positive character arc, usually it's like that's how I kind of want to do it with my campaign, where it's a lot, say like a lie's been told to you, and you now find out that lie, and it changes you for the better, and you as a person change. The neutral character
Neo.
arc.
That's basically Neo from the Matrix.
Oh, what's that? How they? Because they added it back there. I can't say.
I don't know. I don't recall what you're talking about. But that analogy of the world is a lie and you're waking up. That's Neo. If you think about it, that's Neo from the Matrix. He's living in the Matrix. He's asleep and he's just doing the daily grind 9 to 5 as an office guy. And they make it a point when they pull out the bug from his stomach. They make it a point to basically say he is now waking up. Like that movie, The Matrix, is a great example of just artistic creativity saying, or all these allegories and analogies of here is him on his journey to true awakeness and truly understanding the whole world that he is in now. And he's seeing things as they are and not as he's being told. But carry on. Neutral.
So you kind of saying that's how I wanted my story to go. It wasn't the part of the book. I guess it's been a really long time since I read it. I think it's like story. I really wish I could remember the name. I'm definitely going to try to find that book. I think it was written by a woman too. It's been a really long time since I actually found that and bring it up. But usually it's positive character arcs. There's something that happens that causes the character to grow, right? They will grow and become anew. So say again, you have that weakness and flaw, and then you overcome it, and you come out as a new, different person. Where we have the neutral one, where you go through this and nothing changes. You go through no real growth or experience. You came out just how you left how you came in. And then the negative arc is you fail to grow. Not rewind.
You doubled down on your beliefs as opposed from growing from them.
Yeah, but it was an actual R word for it. You you regress a bit you regress as a character. You retreat deeper into those flaws of yours. And so when you came out, not necessarily worse than what you came in, but you definitely came out not in a more positive note. Like you didn't come out overcoming your weakness. I think you're saying you came out more
negatively impacted than
No,
positive.
because how it is not that it's something like that. You came out more I'm trying to really think of the word. It's not that you come out like worse. It's that you didn't learn the lesson. You just retreated more into that weakness.
It's a way of basically saying you maintain the status quo, but you're kind of, I guess, reinforced.
Yeah, thank you. You're reinforcing that weakness belief. Yeah, you're regressing. You're reinforcing in that thing. So I guess somebody that goes to that negative arc based on his example would be what's his name from the Matrix, from the first one that betrayed them.
Yeah, I don't remember his
Cypher.
Name. Yeah. But right, I was gonna say, like, if that's the example of a negative character arc necessarily, you can also invert that, because I'm thinking of like the old Batman with Adam West, 1966 Batman. It resets the status quo. You know, the show, it's like it always starts off Batman's fine. It's typical story of Batman, and then crime happens and he goes to confront the crime. And if it's a two-part episode, uh then the next episode picks off with the cliffhanger. But ultimately, Batman stays the same throughout the entire show. He gets, as things happen, he gets reinforced in his philosophy of right versus wrong. He doesn't grow, he doesn't improve upon himself. He might reflect on some of the lessons learned, but ultimately he just defaults back to, I am right, serving justice and good, and being a lawful person is the way to go in society. And then the villains are the ones who, they're doing bad things and doing wrong, and by them doing those things, it's reinforcing Batman's mentality of don't change, stay who you are.
Oh, and I found it. It's Audible. It's an Audible book I had. Well, it's a real book, but that's what it was. An Audible book I had. Actually, that means I should still have it. It should be this one: creating character arcs. It says I have it. It says creating character arcs: the masterful author's guide to uniting story structure, plot, and character development by K.M. Wieland.
Okay.
I have a question for you on that, Benefactor. With those, I guess, sort of character trajectories in mind, do you ever have those in mind when you're starting a character and you're like, all right, I want to take this path, or do you let that happen and evolve naturally?
Uh, for Crusader's campaign, I let it happen a lot more naturally. Because it's not the focus of the campaign. If the character arc was much more the focus of the campaign, then I would more forcefully go towards that goal. And stuff like that, and those changes. But because I know how his campaigns are, I let it just happen throughout whatever he throws at me through the course of the game. So the character, so again, like Tamias, that was the longest running. Generally, always had some change, some revelation, or something that happened, and it would change the course he was on. The only course he stayed true on was he's going to do as the queen acts and definitely save the elven people. But generally, these stuff were like his other short-term goals, his belief system, things like that. I let the natural course of circumstances take charge of that. The big example would be the incident with Koharu and you, which kind of like flipped my relationship with Koharu there.
Because then all of a sudden you start disrespecting me.
And just like, I was, me and him had very similar interests. I was fine with the path I was going to go down. I was willing to, I gave up my eyes and everything, you know what I mean? I was willing to go down the path if it meant going down the path that I know that I wanted, which was to always be a being of justice even after death. I wanted to even have to be a spirit of wrath and vengeance. I would go ahead and sacrifice myself to do that. But there were certain lines I was not willing to cross, and Koharu, who I thought we had understanding, was going to not cross it, not just once, but twice. One was with you, and another was with Dawn. I can't remember the exact order which happened first. I think should have been Dawn first, and I think then you afterwards, because that's when I stopped talking to him. It was definitely after instantly you. So yeah, which was Dawn first, where he wanted me to capture Dawn and lock her up. I'm like, she's an innocent person. She has done nothing wrong. Like, she's broken no law and order, nothing like that. Well, I would not lock up a innocent girl like that for no reason. That's out of pocket. Which I said straight to him, I'm not doing that. That was another, we argued. I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't know Crusader Jackaran remembers that moment.
I do.
Oh,
I'm surprised you didn't coin the term #Koharu was right.
So,
But you wouldn't admit that. I know for a fact you would not.
And then there was the incident with you again where it's like, no, you have to die. And it's like, for what? What did you do wrong to die? Oh, she worships this guy, or she's a spawn of this guy. It's like, yeah, but what did she herself do wrong? Is she serving God? Like, what did she do wrong? And I didn't get a real answer except to pretty much obey. And I was like, this is the last straw. This is not actually stopping evil. We're now attacking innocent people. We're now like trying to let innocent people be tortured or killed, and that is a line I'm not crossing. So generally things like that, it happened naturally throughout the course of the campaign and story as the DM said it. In another campaign, it's a little bit more pronounced where it's the way I want the character to go. This is in my cousin former campaign. Actually, we're doing a new one now, but former campaign that I used to run in real life with him, where my character, he is supposed to get over the death of his best friend, and it's slowly supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be an instant thing. It's supposed to be something that slowly happens as he reconnects with people and help other people get over their own traumas within life. That one was much more. I know the ending, and I work with DM to always walk towards that ending. So it's something that is planned, but I don't know how it's going to. So like I talked to the DM about it, and he's like, "Yeah, we're working on that," and then he will then give it to me. I don't know what it's going to be exactly, but it's going. I know it's something that will come at some point down the pipeline. But that's also because that's how the campaign was based off of.
So I wanna talk about that for a moment there, because that's some key verbiage you're using there. So basically, what you're articulating, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're articulating the DM is creating these ledges, and you have to jump and grab them. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a key thing I wanted to note, is that the DM created the ledges based on what you guys talked about.
Yeah.
And then when you see the ledge, you're like, okay, I don't know how I can fuck this ledge up. I could do it wrong, but let's see what happens.
Oh no, you got it definitely correctly. So my father in the campaign, I was also going through the press street because I messed up with one of the NPCs, and me and her relationship got what's called reversed, where we have a very positive relationship right now. We're kind of not really. Yeah, it's reverse. But it wasn't in such a hard reverse. It's more like we need to solve this issue, or we're not going to be able to communicate with each other properly, and the benefits of our friendship won't be usable for the mechanics of the game. It's a
Right.
long story.
Well,
but
that's also it sounds like that's also a game where it's more social interaction based.
yes, heavily.
So if it's social interaction based, you have to do something really messed up. Like in real life, you have to do something really messed up for someone to cut you off to the point where they're not going to talk to you. They have to cut you off. So, all right, in that instance, if you miss the ledge, it's a setback. It's not like you ruin someone's wedding night, which if you ruin someone's wedding night, that would probably be such a grievous impediment on your relationship that it would take a lot of time and discussion to heal that type of wound.
Oh yeah, a player actually did that at the very start. Like it was his backstory, background.
God.
Yup. My man started hard reverse, and we're like, "Why are you like this, bro?"
Wow.
But yeah, I said something to her, not hurtful directly to her. It was more about myself, my character not really knowing who he was, because my character was, my character analyzes his best friend, like that. His best friend that died was the guy that, in essence, kind of like broke him out of his shell, and he was just trying to be like him. It was a similar situation with the character's father, which goes into one of the legends we talked about. My father was going through depression because he lost his job, and I play a half black, half Asian character. My father was on the Asian side, and he was stereotypical Asian, just to save time, stereotypical Asian. So with him losing his job and everything, he's fighting depression from not being able to, prove how great we are, and he's failing. He really let down his family. My mother also had a good job. It wasn't like it was a single big outcome. But, it's, again, stereotypical Asian thing.
It's a matter of honor and pride.
Yes. So, he was going through that, and I was also going through my own depression. And because I wasn't really talking to my father, because for my story, I was a little afraid of my father. The analogy I use is like he's like a giant mountain. I'm afraid of him. I'm afraid to climb this mountain. Which one of the revelations was to over time realize that he's not as big of a mountain as I thought he was. Me and him are very similar in a lot more ways than I thought. One of my main things was my relationship with my father in that story. Was all the best friend. It was like a two different things. But yeah, if I missed that ledge of really talking and communicating with my father, is he would commit suicide. But there is a safety net that we had in the game, which is a bit about the mechanic in the storyline where we go inside their, we'll say their soul world, and help them face their demons literally. So you do have a chance to, in essence, if you miss the ledge, through social contract, there is a combat fight you could do, but it's not an easy fight. They're really hard fights if you let them fall into despair. Then if you don't,
that gives you an option to also not make a hard fail.
Yeah.
You can make there's I guess there's 5 degrees, probably more, but 5 degrees or 5 levels of endings where there's the hard failure. That's what everyone's afraid of. That's what everyone looks at as that means you failed. Then there's the soft failure where it's not completely lost. You just didn't get the outcome you wanted, and you didn't get the person is at a disposition with you, or the objective is at a disposition. So it's a little bit further away. You pushed it down the road. Then there's the neutral option, which is you didn't do anything. It didn't impact it at all. Nothing came of it. It's just there. You just jumped over a barrier and you just kicked the can down the road. Then there's the you succeeded, but it wasn't the ending you wanted. It was just a success, and things are on the up and up. And then there's the hit it, bullseye, you got it exactly as you wanted it, you nailed it. You took home the cake and the trophy.
Yeah, hold on. Let me tell him I'll call him later. I think he's listening in on the podcast now, because that's a really weird time for him to call me at this exact moment.
What I was going to ask is, Lady Potato, with your experience with your character, okay, what's your inference of this? With your character and her or their any other characters, if they're positive or negatives, and then their growth, their growth as a character, and how do they handle the negatives and positives, reaching their goals or not.
Okay, so I think an interesting character to talk about, the one that I believe I've had the most dynamic changes, would be Sylvanas in the Fair End Times. So Sylvanas, she kind of started out as being a character who, she was full of angst. She had a lot of hatred towards the world. She had lots of bad things happen to her. She sought revenge, and that was a big soul focus for her. That was until she found other people, other survivors. She saw, I'm not the only one who's going through all this horrible stuff. I'm around these group of people who have all had horrible things. And a change for her was to connect and to love and to, I guess, find people that she cared about again, because she had lost that. And part of her growth as a character, I would say, in that particular circumstance was, in her pursuit of revenge, she had done some things she wasn't proud of. And I think acknowledging her guilt has been a big part of her growth, is going, once she's going from being somebody who did things without remorse to now I'm gaining this remorse back, and this remorse is killing me because I did all these horrible things to people, and navigating that, as well as having people to help you navigate that, not just take it all on herself again.
Yeah, so your character concept is that she was abandoned or left alone as a kid, and she's basically had to go to the school of hard knocks. She had to grow and learn things
By
almost
herself,
by herself.
pretty much. Yeah.
And her relationships are very limited. I remember when I was telling you guys about the start of the campaign, I was telling you, like, you're coming from a society of people that their mentality is every time there's a gathering of people, they get attacked. So the society as a whole, everyone has learned to not stay together, to split up, break apart, etc.
Mhm.
And I told you guys your characters are ones who kind of break that mold. You guys are supposed to look at it as we have strength in numbers.
Mhm.
And Sylvanas is a great character in that regard, because while her instinct is this is all going to fall apart, she still had that instinct of, or that longing to be together with other people.
Because deep down she wanted connection, she wanted to love, but she had a lot of trust issues. And well, if I get to know these people too well, what happens when they die and then I'm left alone again with all this
Yeah.
hurt?
Yeah.
So it provides her a motivation to protect these people because she doesn't want to go through that loss again, as well as to push forward and to find more people to pull out of these bad situations.
Yeah. And it's a tangible thing that all of the characters get a chance to experience is, all right, here's my goal. I can reach my goal. I can potentially reach my goal. However, what do I do if something gets in my way to stop me from reaching that? And that's a testament to the character as, are they going to become determined to try and fix and solve that problem? Benefactor's character Timaeus is a great example of that. When barriers were put in his way, his mentality was, okay, how do I overcome this barrier? Because this is getting insane. I'm so close to achieving my objective, and now something else is stopping me. And in his case, he isn't afraid to trample over other players that act as barriers to him. And you've seen that, or I've seen you go through that with both Blair and with Sylvanas, where circumstances will change,
Mhm.
and your character can kind of recognize either I don't have the skills to deal with this myself and I'll need to enlist someone, or there's something more to this that I'm not seeing. And I mean, I can think of one or two scenarios where Sylvanas has gone to Timaeus and asked him, like, hey, this is the thing I'm up against. And then Timaeus is like, well, if that's what you're dealing with, here's the answer.
Mhm.
And then she would be like, I didn't think about that. So, like, that's an example of, she has a very clear character flaw. And with that character flaw, you as a player are able to hook that into a role play encounter.
Yes.
And that's the key thing here, is using your character's strengths and flaws as a role play hook. Use them to propel the story forward and to propel your character's experience forward.
Mhm. I would say Sylvanas' major flaw is her mistrust of other people, as well as her willingness to lie to other people. And that can also be her weakness as well, because she's lied to many people, manipulated, and she's been that kind of person. And it may
Oh, yeah.
still bite her in the ass. Sorry, YouTube.
Yeah. Well, right. Like that's a perfectly fine thing to have as well. And it's amusing. It's interesting. I'm thinking about my this past session of my Star Wars game, where there were so many things said between the players and NPCs that people are mistrusting, and they're not sure what anyone else's motivations are, and they're finding inconsistencies, and so they're questioning things. And it's like, yes, that's what you should, because you also have to understand every character and every player even has their lens and their perspective of how they're looking at a situation. And from their perspective, I'm doing everything right. I didn't do anything wrong. And then when you reverse the table, you go to someone else, they're looking at, no, I'm doing everything right. That person's in the wrong. And again, it comes from their perspective, their lens, all the factors that they know about that each individual person. And again, tying it back to what I said before about character flaws, I like it to be a personality trait. I like it to be something in their personality. Someone might have a personality trait being unable to admit that they're wrong. They're a Marty McFly. Okay. You call them chicken and they just lose all sense of logic and reason.
Well, does anybody have anything else they would like to say about character creation or anything we haven't touched on this topic?
Yes, I do have something I would like to say, and it's about this character right here, the Benefactor. One of the things I wanted to bring up about, we kind of a little bit was on we talked about past, we didn't really get into that specifically. How do you create
We'll have
your
we'll have an
antagonist?
episode. We'll have an episode here where we talk about villains. We'll do that. We'll
Hey,
do
I
that.
like
I
the word
promise you.
antagonist, not villain. Antagonist.
Yes.
Fair.
But still, antagonists, NPCs, I would say notable NPCs for sure. The ones that actually make a big impact on your world, whether they're adversarial or not. It's its own topic.
Yeah. So, but carry on about flaws and Benefactor here.
No, it's fine. No, when we talk about antagonists, I will then talk about the great man that is himself, the Benefactor. So we'll go on to whatever.
You naming yourself the Benefactor here is like me taking on the persona of Terrafell.
Yes.
That's how I look at that. It's like me taking on the persona Darth Vader.
Hey, I love the character I made. I really wish they got to explore more of them. But again, we'll save that for another time.
Okay, all right. I was allowing you, if you wanted to elaborate, give some people a sneak peek on the Benefactor. I'm okay with that.
So what else did you have for us, Lady Potato?
I mean, that was mostly it, and I was kind of letting things go to discussion. There was one thing that I kind of thought about throughout the discussion, which I should have mentioned before we got into the actual character creation method, but it was more or less information that you need to know about the setting, and I think that's a rough idea of where your players fit in the world. Like, for example, if you're starting a game where you're going to be level 1 adventurers, and a level 1 adventurer is somebody in your world who maybe they're a weakling, they're nothing. It's important to provide players the context of a level 1 player in this world is a weakling or nothing, or if it's a different campaign, you say, oh right, this you're a level 1 player, but you are actually somebody in this world who's competent. I think giving them that sort of, I guess, idea of where they kind of fit in to begin with is also good. That was something we sort of missed.
Yeah, that's I think that kind of goes into theme with everything we were talking about, where it's like, okay, talk to the players. And as a DM, as I said before, very early on in this podcast, I was saying that I like the idea of giving players visuals, giving players source material to look up or read. I like to start with that because that's typically where my frame of mind comes from. It comes from like, okay, here's a source material to work with. Go here and find that out. Go here, read a book or watch a TV show, watch a movie, and it helps you get your idea in what this world is like. The only time I didn't really do that was my first fair game where Benefactor was playing as Dimitri or Nicholas. That was the only time I really didn't give a here, watch this to immerse yourself in the world. Do you have anything, Benefactor, that you use to help players get into the world?
For the most part, no. I've only really so far ran 2 campaigns. The only one I probably could have did with one of the small ones I had was the Monster Hunter one. I could have been like, you ever go watch clips of Monster Hunter? But for the most part, I only had 2 campaigns so far, and there's no real good reference I wanted to get players to watch without giving away, very important things for the first one, which was Scion, since it was based off of, a little Cthulhu mythos style with D&D type of gameplay. And then the other one I'm doing right now that I made is a tabletop RPG, is more based off of a game series. So it's like you can, and if you played it, if you not, I tried to make them not worry about that stuff. I want them to have whatever creativity they want to have, and then hit me with the we work there. Then to make them end up, because sometimes that ends up influencing how they make characters a little too much. And to me, that kind of stifles a bit of their creativity when making a character. Because now they're like, I definitely want a character that fully fits into the world and not be a little bit of the nail that sticks out, sort of say. So I'm a little iffy on that.
Yeah, here's Niraj's method. He uses drugs.
It's a good method. Good method. Blair approves.
Well, Lady Potato, do you use any methods? I don't recall you actually having us read or watch anything for your game.
Well, here's the thing. I'm still a fairly inexperienced DM, so my actual techniques for introducing players, I was more curious to hear what you guys had to say. But thinking back on my campaign, there was definitely source materials I could have provided. However, just my overall approach is that I kind of give them a general idea right out of the gate. And like the Benefactor, I like to have mysteries and things for them to find out about the world when they're playing. So, but giving them source materials, that might be something I do in the future.
Okay. Niraj says, does that help with your character creation? In reference to ChaosRyzen saying he's an alcoholic.
Sometimes.
Well,
yeah. That's how I came up with Leon, the Dustblade.
Well, what I was going to say is, if you guys don't have anything else, I would like to tell you guys a story of what happened in the game I played for New Year's. And I've been saving it just for you two, because I wanted to tell both of you two. And it's great. It's great in what happened, and hopefully someone out there will use this and understand from this some important messages of role playing and player concept and player characters. I am going to use some names when describing this, so that's your forewarning. So if you guys don't have anything else, I will explain.
Please, I'm all ears. Also, just a quick note, I don't know if you guys saw it. I linked a article talking about what I was talking about with the 3 character arcs.
In
It's
the
a
private
small,
chat, yeah.
Yeah, a small synopsis of what I was talking about, so you guys can get a clear understanding.
Okay. I will put that in the comment section. So if any viewers out there want to read it, they'll have something they can refer to. All right. So, this campaign we did as a one shot. It's actually a continuation, not necessarily a one shot, but it's a New Year's thing. My brother's coming in from out of town, so we're doing this thing. It's based on the Icewind Dale campaign module, Rime of the Frost Maiden, and we started off in the town of Dugan's Hole, which Niraj in chat, he and I are watching the Geeks and Gamer tabletop with the Rudy, who's doing Rime of the Frost Maiden. And as he was just saying, spoiler alert, they want to destroy the entire town of Dugan's Hole. But at any rate, so this game is starting off there. Our party composition is, I have 2 brothers in this game. So my one brother is DMing, I'll call him Brother 1, and Brother 2 is playing as a arcane trickster rogue. Then there's my second brother's wife. She's playing as a ranger. And then there's one of my best friends. He's playing as a reptile wizard. And then there's me. I'm playing as Hal, the barbarian dwarf slayer. All right, so that's our comp. We just have us 4. And at the start of the game, my brother does this thing. My DM brother, he does this thing where he gives us each a secret. And the secret usually has some form of perks and bonuses to it that come with it. And we have to go throughout the game. So the gist of our secrets was our lizard wizard. His thing is that he can eat people. And when he eats them, he gets a permanent ability score improvement. So you're like, oh, that's great. But then it has a caveat to it. He has a chest burster in him from Alien that every time he takes a long rest, he has to roll to determine whether or not it's going to burst. And every time he does this roll, the chances of it happening increase by 10% or so. So he is now up to like a 60% chance of that happening. All right. My rogue brother, his secret is he has to collect a vial of blood from every player character at the table, and he has to give that vial of blood to his secret cult following that he is a part of. Then my sister-in-law, her secret is she has to find out what another player's secret is and thwart them. And then there's mine, which was my character is undead. He has frost resistance. He has bludgeoning. He has physical resistance, and he has frost resistance. And just innately, he's a barbarian. So he innately has this without rage. And again, he's undead. And the new secret, I got a second secret this time around. The second secret is I'm also royalty. And I have to be mindful if I let anyone know that I'm royalty, it could have consequences for, I don't know what. All right, so that's basically our composition. Now, the writing on the wall should have been my DM brother introduced 2 PvP secrets to the game. Okay, my brother and my sister-in-law, both of them had PvP secrets. And at the start of the game, my rogue brother says to my character, or says to the entire party as we're all gathered together, he says, I want to make a blood oath. Is anyone willing here to make a blood oath? And I say to him, as my character, Hal, says to him, you shouldn't be making pledges to things that you don't know what they mean, that you don't understand their impact or meaning. And his character is a half-elf at this time. And my sister-in-law, she's also a half-elf. So I say this to him, and he kind of brushes it off like, oh, no, I'm not like my people. I'm different. And my sister-in-law, she acts like an elf. And my character doesn't like that at all because he's a dwarf. And is like, yeah, you guys are Nancy's. Anyway, we make this blood oath. He manages to convince me to give him this blood oath. And I cut my hand. He cuts his hand. We shake on it. And we make the blood oath. And that's when he steals my blood. I didn't know this, but he made a secret roll, stole my blood. My character doesn't care. But my character is now, as Lady Potato, Benefactor, you, and maybe the viewers, you guys probably know by now, Hal is now understanding this guy and him are in a blood oath. And they're not going to retreat from combat. They're going to stay with each other, thick through thin, and fight together, live and die by the sword. All right. Well, the journey goes on, and we're given 2 quests. First quest, there's some giants that are stealing the beer that's coming into the town. They're killing any travelers that transfer the beer in and out of Dugan's Hole. So we're tasked to find the giants and put an end to them stealing the beer or whatever it is that they're doing. Okay. My wizard friend, my reptile friend, he's okay with this. He wants to kill giants. He's like, oh, giants? Yeah, let's kill giants. And the ranger, my sister-in-law, and the rogue, they're both like, don't care. Like, okay, yeah, whatever. Okay. So, all right, we're all on board with this. Then we get objective 2. Objective 2 is on the road outside of town, there's 2 fortresses. And these fortresses are opposite of each other. No one knows where they came from. One is like this sophisticated imperialistic fortress, and this other is like this ragtag team of bandits that just threw this fortress together. Okay, clear difference in their firepower and their design. So we're then tasked with going up and making sure these 2 guys don't go around killing anyone, that they don't wage war in the area. All right. So we go out. I'm going to start skipping through a lot of the player interaction because this game ran till 4 in the morning. It started at 6 in the morning, or 6 in the afternoon, ended at 4 in the morning. So we go through our interactions. We reach the first fortress. All right. While we're going to the giants, we decide take care of the fortresses first. That'll be easier. All right. Go to the first fortress. And the rogue player abandons us. He sneaks off into the darkness and he goes over to the other camp, the other fortress, the run-down fortress. We stop at the Imperial Fortress. Go inside, and I wish to speak to their leader. And Hal is not a charismatic character, like stat-wise. He is charismatic just from personality. So I'm role-playing this character, and I'm managing to actually connect with these guys. And they're like imperialistic, they're dogmatic, they're very authoritarian. And my guy Hal is able to actually negotiate with them a ceasefire. He's able to negotiate with them, bring them to the table to have a discussion so that no civilians get hurt in this entire war that these 2 are waging. The rogue goes to the shabby-looking fortress, talks to their people, and has no interest in stopping a war. His interest is in bribing them into a business deal so that he gets wine and he'll get a cut of their profit. And once he gets their wine, he then is going to go back to the town and say, hey, these guys have wine. And his objective, I guess, was to undermine me because my objective was to create a neutral ground and a ceasefire. I don't know what his objective was. But then after I'm done talking to the Imperials, I go over to the shabby people and I meet my brother's rogue. And he tells me, oh, there's no need to talk to them. I already did. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they're going to sit down and have a talk. They agree to the armistice. And he's like, no. And so then my guy's like, oh, well, then I need to talk to them because my objective is to have them sit down at the table and negotiate this. So my brother tries to tell me, oh, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to do it anyway. So I ignore him. We go ahead and do it. I talk to the shabby people and manage to get them to sit down. And needless to say, the whole thing goes awry where at the negotiation table, one side, the shabby looking people are tricksters. They're liars. So they manipulated the entire circumstance to make it so that the Imperials look like they did some foul play. All right. The Imperials decide then, okay, we're going to just withdraw because we had nothing to do with this foul play. This is a bunch of nonsense. We're innocent. But we get the idea. We're just going to leave. We're just going to back out, be gone. All right. Well, my character didn't care. My character's like, I'm completely neutral. The town is neutral. No one cares. So my brother didn't realize, my rogue brother didn't realize that he thought that he had pulled one over on everyone, that he had succeeded, but he actually kind of screwed himself. But then what happened was, from this point forward, my sister-in-law was harping on him and nagging him, ankle biting him the entire game. All right. She was following him around, stalking him. I called it, they were playing submarine games because they're both rolling stealth checks against each other. They're rolling perception checks to detect each other. They're trying to whisper and lie about each other to other people, like complete nonsense. Well, meanwhile, me and my reptile buddy this entire time we've been talking to these fortresses has been, when are we going to kill giants? I want to kill giants. Where are the giants? We're supposed to be killing giants. So finally, I'm like, all right, buddy, let's go kill giants, you and I. We go off to kill giants. All right, we get out to the forest. We fail to find the tracks of the giants. We found some indications of giants, but nothing concrete. So we decide, all right, we're going to make camp right here in the road. And in the middle of the road, if giants come along, that'd be fantastic. All right. So my brother, the rogue brother, him and his wife, they're going back and forth with their submarine games, and that results in him losing the bloods of my character that he had, and as well as several other people that he'd collected. He lost their blood, and that was kind of a setback. It made him a little bit frustrated that he went through all this progress and then he lost it, and he lost it because him and his wife were playing these submarine games, these PvP submarine games together. And finally, after our rest, me and my lizard boy, after we rested, we got attacked. We got attacked by 2 wolves. And so we're fighting these wolves, and I'm beating the ever-living hell out of them. And they managed to just rip my lizard boy apart. They annihilated him. He's a wizard. They're wolves. They just kicked his ass. So I'm not worried about it. I'm just going ham, and I'm unleashing the hammer on them. Well, at this point, my brother and his wife, they realize, hey, we need to catch up to the other 2. So they come, like, completely metagaming here. They come running to our rescue, and as they come to the rescue, they fight, kill the wolves, and we manage to save the lizard boy. Well, the lizard boy is now all covered in blood. So my rogue brother decides he's going to go over and collect his blood. All right. Goes over to collect his blood, and my sister-in-law calls him out. What are you doing? Because she has no idea why he's collecting these blood. She's very sus of him, why he's walking around with vials of blood. And he's giving her all kinds of like bullshit excuses. Instead of just simply saying, I'm a healer, instead of just saying that, he's giving her all kinds of bullshit excuses like, oh, I'm collecting these, for safety or something. And so the lizard, my friend, he decides, hey, I'm going to attack him because he's a lizard and he's very primitive. So he just sees some guy walking up to him with some vials. So he attacks, he misses. But in doing that, my sister-in-law, she then says, what are you doing? And she begins to question him. So my brother then begins to bullshit his reason for collecting blood because it's a secret. He's not trying to tell anyone what his secret is. And he comes up with this whole thing of, oh, he's trying to administer aid. And it was really sloppy of our bumbling dwarf here and our lizard friend here to just aimlessly go out into the forest to stupidly get themselves killed. And that's the mistake he made. So was like the one of many mistakes he made. So he's looking at this as, okay, I'm throwing out this line to excuse the roguish behavior I've been doing and the bullshit I've been doing. And it's going to make everything good because I'm a master at bullshit. And he didn't realize that my character, Hal, as you guys both know by now, I think, he's got nothing to live for. Hal is a suicidal character. The only thing he has to his name is his honor. And so what my brother had said with that statement was completely tarnishing Hal's honor. So Hal wasn't happy about that. Now Hal is like, okay, I trust you're ignorant and you don't realize what you just said. And I don't appreciate it. So I'm going to ask you to just apologize for what you just said. So my brother, in his infinite wisdom, thought that, oh, this is just my little brother being a hotshot. He's trying to be smart and cute right now. So he looks to me and says, you are an idiot that nearly got yourself killed, or something to this effect. I am fuming. Like, not in real life. In real life, I'm kind of giddy. But in game, that's not what you say to Hal. And we just ended combat. Like, combat. This is happening right at the end of combat. So, like, I'm expecting we could get attacked by more wolves. That's how ripe this is. So I look to the DM, and the DM says to me, you still have rage active. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make an attack. And I attack my brother. And my brother is amused by this. My rogue brother, he's amused by this. All right, because he doesn't realize what's about to come. Because he forgot the Holy Trinity. Rogue trumps wizard. Wizard trumps barbarian. Barbarian trumps rogue. So I attack him. And when he realizes I'm rolling 3d10 damage, and I haven't even added my strength to that yet, he realizes that his level 5 rogue has like 35 hit points. And in one fell swoop, I completely chunked almost all of his health away. And he was like, I'm going to use cunning action and reduce that damage. Sure. And I told him, I was like, okay, so I'm going to split my damage dice up so that you can accurately decide which dice you want to mitigate. And he began saying, oh, now you're playing all these technical games and you're manipulating. And my brother had to step in and say, no, if you listen to what he said, he's breaking his dice apart so you can choose, because of how cunning action works, is it's an attack action. Well, he gets 2 different actions to attack. One action, he can attack twice and do double damage, basically. And then he gets a bonus action, which is a separate action to attack again. So in one case, he's rolling 2 damage dice. In the other case, he's rolling 1 damage dice. So I roll and I do 30 damage. And it's logical. We're like, okay, it's logical. You'll reduce the 20 damage dice because that's what you would do if you're trying to survive. So, okay, good there. All right. But I know he's a rogue. I know he's about to die. And I wasn't going to kill him. He didn't know that, though. He didn't know I wasn't going to kill him. So he says that, or it comes to his turn after my first volley. He does a good move. He thinks of a very good move of rogue versus barbarian. He's like, I cast sleep. And I think very logically. I think about it and I say, that's not going to work. Because one, he doesn't know how many hit points I have. My guy at full health has 79 hit points. From fighting the wolves, I got knocked down to 59 hit points. So, Benefactor here, on the spot. I'm going to put you on the spot. How high of a sleep roll would he have to make to put a barbarian with 59 hit points down?
You fail in general. You can't make it.
Why?
Especially you cast at first level, because the maximum is 40.
Okay.
You roll 5d8. The max is 40. He has to upcast it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that was the first thing. So I was thinking about it, and I'm like, you can't do that. And when I said that, I said it like that. I said it like a mumble. And I was scratching my chin as I was thinking about it. It's like, I don't think you can do that. So he got a little frustrated from that. And he was like, what do you mean I can't do that? He started raising his voice, get a little bit angry. And he then starts at my brother, my DM brother, complaining that, oh, now you guys are going to play all these technical rules and all these things that I don't know this game as well as you guys do. And I'm like, well, it's your responsibility to know your character. So you should know that. And then he begins reading sleep. and he doesn't see a problem with it. And I begin saying, well, okay, then do it. Just do it. Just do it and get it over with. All right. But he keeps reading, and he gets to the final part of where sleep doesn't apply. And he finishes it with, if they're undead.
Oh, right. In your story, right? You're also undead. Yeah. But he doesn't know that.
He doesn't know that. This is where, Benefactor, you came from heaven and entered my body, because my smile lit up so wide. My rogue brother did not like it at all. But I turned to look at my DM brother with this giddy grin, and then I looked to my rogue brother and said, "Do it." Just like that, do it. And I was so happy. I was really excited and very happy, because I was going to deck him the moment it didn't work. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. My brother raged, got very angry, and said, "I'm not playing this." And he stormed out of the game. He rage quit. He absolutely stormed out of the game, complained the entire time he was packing up his character sheet that me and my brother we're manipulating the game. We know the game better than him. We're making fun of him and all this stuff. And I tried to explain, one, you don't know my character. And this is part of why I'm bringing this up today, is he thought he was joking. He thought, oh, it's a funny little dwarf here that I just made a blood oath with. Funny little dwarf man. He's so silly. And he didn't understand, because he didn't get to know my character. He thought, oh, my brother is just playing this stereotypical dwarf character, this funny little mimi dwarf character. He didn't understand that I was playing a character, that this character has a personality, that if he actually sat down to have dinner with him, if he actually sat down to have a drink with him, to actually engage and talk with him, he would understand more about this character. He didn't do any of that. Instead, he was off playing submarine games with his wife. And he went off to do fuck all with the sneaky trickery people in their shabby little fortress. He went off to do that. And what happened is, in this entire scenario, was he was being grinded down. Because, again, we started at 6, ended at 4 a.m. Now, he left around 2 a.m. So he missed out on like 2 hours of gameplay. But he left around 2 a.m. That entire time, his wife was nagging at him, trying to figure out what his agenda was. What was he up to? Why was he breaking away from the party? Why was he making secret back deals? Like, she was just nagging him, and it was grinding him down. And when he finally had the opportunity to explain away everything he did, he thought, okay, I'm going to just tell her I'm here to rescue the dumbling dwarf and the idiotic lizard. And in him trying to get away from her, he alienated me. And he alienated the one trait that my character values, the one thing that mattered to my character, Hal, he went after. And that's what set off the entire PvP encounter. And to this day, he still has no idea what he did. Like, to him, it's perfectly fine. Well, what he ended up doing, by the way, what ended up happening was, he said, all right, when he left, he said, I cast Vanish and I'm just out. I'm leaving. I'm done. That's what he did. And my DM brother said, the mistake he made in this situation, other than the roleplay mistake of not knowing the character he's talking about, the mistake he made is that the rogues don't fight barbarians head on. The rogue's best strategy is to say, I'm sorry, my bad, and then wait for the barbarian to turn their back or to be asleep, and then you kill them in their sleep, or you get revenge some other way. You don't take a barbarian on head on. You don't do that. And that's what my brother didn't understand. He was playing an arcane trickster rogue and thought he could brute force, or thought he could magically thwart my character. And so there's a lot of morals and lessons to learn from this story. One, get to know your party members. Get to know their character. Pay attention to their character. The next is PvP encounters. Be very mindful and considerate if you're in a game as a DM, if you're having PvP encounters, if you're allowing PvP encounters, you want to be very mindful as to what you're doing with those PvP encounters. I've said before on this podcast that if someone wants to do PvP, that's a red flag to me. Or if someone's asking about PvP in my games, like I never met you before, you're like, hey, I want to join your game. What's your stance on PvP? That's a red flag to me. Red flag goes up immediately. Whoa, why is this guy asking about PvP? And then
if somebody steps on my shoes, some problem.
Yeah. And that's what I was like I said, part of the lesson to learn here is as a player, you want to get to know your party mates. And you might throw yourself into situations that you as a player don't see as valuable. You don't see as, hey, this is an opportunity this isn't the most expeditious way to do a thing. But my character isn't or doesn't care about expediting things, making things easier. In Benefactor, your game, I had John Constantine, who was a warlock game mechanically wise. I had him punch someone. I had him punch a guard. And it's like mechanically, he has no way of actually punching someone effectively, if at all. Like it's not in his wheelhouse. It's not something he can do effective at all. It does no damage. It has no benefits to him. But at that point in time, that's what the character would have done. That's the only tool the guy had. It's like, this is the tool for the job. Just deck the guy and move on. All right. That's playing the character. That's playing true to the personality. That's not playing the mechanics. The mechanics would be, I cast Eldritch Blast non-fatally. Any inference you guys want to draw from that story? Any feedback or anything you want to critique or analyze? Any questions on it?
Yeah, you're a better man than me. I would have killed him. Like, if you're doing that, I'd have killed him. You said, "Oh, I wasn't planning on killing him. He didn't know that." I'm like, "No, I would have killed him." You spit on my honor, sir. How dare you? I'm gonna show you to your god.
Well, see, that's also a difference in character personality, right? Like Hal is lawful good, but also like there is no honor to gain from killing this guy, right? Like he's a pissant. So killing him doesn't actually benefit you, or doesn't benefit Hal. So it's more satisfactory to deck him, put him in his place, and then basically from doing that, you assert your dominance and your honor is fulfilled. Now if he shit talks again, then I'll just deck him again because, he's a nobody.
I just wanted to make a note on the PvP aspect. I think I said it kind of last time when we were talking about player interactions, but PvP is one of those things that I allow. It's not something that I outright encourage in my games, but I do see that there are some circumstances where that can happen. Because, like, for example, I remember in one game where the Benefactor was there, he got into a friendly duel with one of the other members of the party. Stuff like that can happen, as well as if players have actual conflicts of interest. Violence can be a natural escalation. However, my one consideration is that both players have to consent to PvP, and they have to accept the outcome as well. Whether that's their player dies because the other character decided to kill them, or whatever sort of social implication that has going forward with awkwardness in the party. That's sort of my policy on handling the PvP side of things. But I want to say that the whole having a secret thing was kind of interesting. But I'm curious if you guys were kind of, told in advance that it would be one of those things that could possibly tear the party apart.
No, we had no idea. How we did it is he wrote up the secrets. He wrote them on the spot. So as we're gathering up and we're unpacking our supplies and our gaming mats and things like that, our character sheets. As we're unpacking that stuff, he said, "All right, does anyone need me for anything?" After he helped us set up what we needed, he's like, "All right, I need 10 minutes alone. I gotta write some stuff down." And that's when he went to do the secrets. And then he had us roll 1d10, and that determined what secret we got. So he wrote 10 secrets for 4 players, and then we rolled to see what we got. And if like me and my rogue brother, we both got the same roll. So he had us roll again, both of us roll again to see which. And in hindsight, reflecting, he said, he should have considered having 2 PvP objectives or 2 PvP objectives in the same game. He's like, in hindsight, I probably shouldn't have done that. And I was like, yes, you really should have thought about that, introducing a PvP element. Like, I don't have a problem with the secrets. Secrets are fine.
Mhm.
But when you have a DM manufactured PvP scenario, that's going to be the culminating thing of, at some point you're going to reach a culmination of events that explode.
Yes. And I mean, in that situation, he should have told the players, even not necessarily saying, "Hey, this is the thing," but just letting the players know, "I have this thing out there. There could be some PvP."
Yeah.
Did he do that?
No. What's it called? To also stipulate, or to explain further, elaborate. Before we got these secrets, before we started the game, my rogue brother was boasting and bragging about this character. He's like, it's the most opposite character of me. It's a rogue spellcaster, and he's lawful evil. And so he's boasting and bragging about this. This is my first lawful evil character. This is my lawful evil character. I'm playing a lawful evil character. He said this like 5 times. And sure enough, my sister-in-law, her secret is find a evil player character and thwart their secret. That's what her secret was, if I didn't say that before.
Yes.
That's what her secret was. So she already knows, and I've said in the game before the game, I said my character's lawful good. He's not going to be doing any dumb shit. So she already knows one character who's evil, guaranteed by his own admission. He's openly said out of game he's evil. She doesn't play Dungeons and Dragons like at all. She hasn't, like, last time she played it was like 3 years ago. So, and before then she didn't even like play it at all. So like she doesn't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons. So she's completely metagaming the entire game, like nonstop. She very little role play attempts on her part. And like I said, it was just, she was ankle biting him the entire game, just on his shit, up his ass, questioning every single thing he did. And it was just slowly ribbing him mentally. In his psyche, it was slowly ribbing him. And it distracted him from reasonableness and distracted him from being normal, I think.
Oh boy, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. Let's see what Niraj says. Yeah, players turning on each other like that can seriously sour a group. Have to be careful about that. You can almost make an episode on that. That's right.
Yes, we could. We really could, which gets me to our next topic, is what are we going to talk about next time? That might not be a bad place to start.
PvP?
I feel like
PvP
bad guy
player
here.
interactions, like in-party interactions.
Okay. Yeah, interactions. I like that. We can talk about interactions next time.
And everybody make me feel like the bad guy here. Well, I do play the evil guys. I'm like, really now? This is how you handle it. It's not wrong with, having to show someone, the back slap them. Part of them got to put them in their place. You know what I mean? A little PvP doesn't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll talk about more of that when we get around to talking about alignment. But maybe that's something we should talk about just a little bit, is the alignment with character creation. and the inference or understanding of, Benefactor here likes playing evil characters.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a few evil characters in my games that are NPCs that the players like and they're okay with. Either a darksider or leaning dark side, or they're evil in D&D's metrics. Or they're morally gray, like a John Constantine, where they do some bad, but it's for some greater good. I would say a key thing is, as I think I've said before to you guys in private, I know, my mentality with evil characters, and consider this other DMs out there, if someone comes to your game wanting to be a evil character, I wouldn't necessarily stop them, but I would make it clear to them that the moment they operate against the party, they're forfeiting their character to me. They're giving their character to me.
I would say that depends how they fold their character, because like there could be minor things. Or what would be an example of someone doing something so egregious that you would consider tabling their character?
And what's the line between evil and stupid?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the line between evil and stupid is, okay, the party is working to, well, here's a great example. We'll use the necromancer, the evil necromancer. Okay. Evil necromancer has an undead army. All right. Players go to fight the undead army. All right. And the evil necromancer of the party decides, okay, I'm going to betray the party and I'm going to take the big bad's army and use that army to kill the other players. All right. That is going to be an example where, okay, I'm going to take over your character because now he's my character, because you're now operating against the party. Another example would be, okay, which that would probably be the end of the campaign if that happened. But, like if you killed the big bad and the other player took over the place of the big bad, I'd probably say, okay, it's the end of the campaign. We'll leave it at that cliffhanger as to what's going to happen next. If, for example, it's something to the effect of, hey, I got an offer from an evil cultist to kill everyone in my party, and then the necromancer lord is going to elevate me. He's going to elevate me to his right hand. All right. And then the player begins to act on that. They begin to, okay, I'm going to actively try and kill these other players. That would be an instance of, okay, you are now losing this character because now he's my character operating in the interest of helping my villain. You're now just a minion. You're nothing different from any of my other villains, any of the other NPCs. It'd be no different to me if Wariv were to betray you, or if Graves were to betray you. Okay, it's okay. They're just another NPC. You guys look at them as allies, and for the time being, they can be your ally until you do something that pisses them off and they say, you know what, we're not friends anymore. I don't know if you guys have any lines like that. I don't know if you guys just allow your players to, run rampantly attack, or if you put an invisible bubble up where, no, you can't attack anyone at all. You can't attack your friends.
I mean, the invisible bubble, no, but if they start attacking their friends, it's kind of like there's one of you and four of them. So it's like, I kind of let the chips. I would say I let the chips fall. I can't honestly say I've had that scenario happen in any of my games just yet. But
well, I give you an example in my first game with Benefactor here. Dimitri could take on the whole party by himself. The entire party he could take on and win. Absolutely. So, like, what do you do in that circumstance where your one player is strong enough to just completely annihilate the rest of the party? And he's not afraid of just, okay, I'm going to strong arm one player of the party. That's usually how it starts. I'm going to strong arm one player. And then the rest of the party says, hey, no, that's not right. You shouldn't do that. But we're not going to do anything about it. I mean, you saw that with Benefactor's character, Leon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and Leon's a great example of PvP where I didn't get involved as a DM. I stayed out of it. It was like, and I know technically it's a player versus DM circumstance in that situation, but it was technically PvP because the players were going against each other as well.
Mm-hmm. It was some of the NPCs around us agreed with Leon, and some of the PCs did, and some of them didn't. That was the situation, to clarify for our viewers.
And at the end of the day, they also backstab me, especially that one dwarf.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, I look at that as like, okay, the players are within their right to argue and fight with each other. But as I said, if I look at it as there's a threshold they reach, when they reach that threshold of I'm going to now operate opposite or counter to the party, which I guess the fine line, where I draw that line is the party has an objective, has a goal, and typically the party objective is, hey, we're all in this together. And the moment someone says, I'm going against that, we're not in this together, I'm in this for me, or I'm looking at this as you guys are against the objective here, that's the moment of, okay, now you're crossing into DM territory. Now you're working as an NPC for the DM. And I might not step in because you let the players state their case. You let the players articulate it. But as a DM, I'm hovering my fingers over your piece. That's what I'm doing. I'm like, okay, when am I going to take this character over? Because they're dancing a very fine line of being one of my NPCs at this point. And don't necessarily have to take that piece immediately. I can wait till the session's over, and then tell the player, hey, you have to roll a new character because your character is now mine. Or I might not tell them at all. I'd say, hey, you have to roll a new character. And if they ask, then I'll tell them. But, you know, I don't have to tell them anything. It's like, okay, your character is now mine. That's how it is. Whatever choices you made or whatever choices your character has come to, they've led him to the point of now working for the forces of evil or the bad guys who are working against the party.
Hey, sometimes the players bring it upon themselves to lead to that player. All right.
And sometimes the party itself leads that direction.
And
just in general.
Here's the sad part about that, Benefactor. I don't think, like in Nicholas's case, I think even if I took him from you, even if you would be happy about it, if you saw like his character arc, how he operated, if he maintained consistency under someone else's control, under the DM's control, it's like, okay, that's my character. Like he's playing my character. You know, he's as evil as that, and his agenda hasn't changed. His goals are the same. He may have even achieved his goal. You know, he might have resurrected his wife. You know, like you'd be like, hey, my character's still prospering, and I don't even control him anymore.
Yeah, but my new cat probably be upset with him. Like, what did you do to this man that made him join the evil side and trying to kill y'all? I would think, question like, why? What did y'all do? And then probably knowing that nothing changed, like, you know what? You're right. I should help him. He's kind of because, like I said, sometimes it's also the players in the campaign with you, where you're just like, y'all are not helping me not want to kill y'all. You know, really trying here, and you're making it really hard. But that also depends on the personality of how you make the character. But yeah, sometimes players make really, really hard. Oh,
I didn't see this part. Niraj said, so I basically had to put an end to it by not tolerating group infighting like that. Yeah. And that's something you have to deal with. I remember with Benefactor's character to Nicholas, and a little bit less so Dimitri. Dimitri had it later on, but there was a lot of in-party fighting and arguing of, well, why are you doing this and why are you doing that, and people trying to understand what each other's motivations and agendas were. And the one player for Benefactor, he was kind of metagaming and up Benefactor's ass. Because they had played before, they were friends in Warcraft, and so he kind of like knew and had an idea, like, okay, I know this guy has an agenda, and I know he's planning on something, so I'm going to stalk and wait for him to do that thing and find out what he's doing. And Nicholas is over here like, fuck off already. I don't want anything to do with you. You haven't earned my trust. I don't want to expose my business to you. It's none of your damn business. Mind your own. No, we don't talk that much about that part of Nicholas, but that's a key part I recall of Nicholas is him wanting to be left alone and not bothered by other players. Well, other characters.
Yeah, that was his character arc growth, was to, be brought back into a more social role, go back to the way he was before he lost his wife and everything. But, the players didn't know how to interact with that. And it kind of was backfiring the opposite way. We were just like,
he had the negative growth character arc.
He's like, yeah, he's just digging deeper, and they really weren't helping. When just like whenever they were in trouble, they would call for him. The only time they would call for him, we're in trouble, we don't know what to do. Come solve this. It's like, really? It just keeps folding negative and negative. Now it's also encroaching on me. We're just like, okay, you guys are clearly doing this to purpose. And Dimitri, as everyone knows, Dimitri was not an evil character. He was an aggressive man. He was chaotic good. He was very aggressive by the ways of Lord Hector. Praise be to Hector. He didn't take crap from nobody.
All right. Is there anything else you want to tack on to that, Lady Potato? PvP? Anything you want to elaborate on? Because we almost had a PvP encounter in your game. It spilled out into OC, into accusations at the table, but you have anything you want to say regarding players acting evil and contrary to the party?
Oh boy. Well, that particular instance that you brought up, I don't think that there was anybody particularly acting evil. It was a very mild situation, to be quite honest. I mean, sure, there could have been some moral qualms, but it kind of got out of hand because it did escalate to out of game accusations, personally. But yeah, as far as PvP, I think I've stated my opinion. I let players do it. If that situation would have escalated to PvP, I probably would have stepped in and been like, you guys know what you're getting yourself into. If things happen, I'm not going to step in. And that's probably how I would have handled it. If one of their characters would have died or been unconscious, like, that would have been something that we would have had to deal with had it happened. I'm thankful that it didn't, but ultimately I take the approach of, if players want PvP, I won't stop them.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Actually, now that we're kind of on that, was there anything in that situation I should have done differently?
Benefactor, anything you think?
No, not really, because it only really got out of hand when he started coming out like out of character, and then the only thing I would have probably said to you to do was to kind of not be super quiet on the situation and kind of get the situation to calm down and give both of us to actually like chill, because one person is now like starting to make the other one get elevated. Like, that person started making me get elevated. He's like, no, and you personally already know how I am, so you just saw like that this is not going to escalate well.
So in essence, you think that I should have stepped in and put an end to the confrontation once it got out of character. I should have been like, nope, we're not dealing with this.
As a DM, Yes.
Okay.
I had a similar situation where when I saw it escalating to the point, it's like, no, I have to step in and be like, this is not happening. All right.
Yeah, I would say the passive way of doing it, which passive conflict resolution is terrible. I don't recommend it. If anyone out there is like, oh yeah, passive conflict resolution is the way to go, you're doing it wrong. But the
You're right. I
passive,
think that, sorry, I just wanted to say that the difference between, like, I mean, if characters are totally fine with things falling as they're falling, that's it. But yeah, sorry, I
yeah,
didn't mean to interrupt.
no, you're fine, you're fine. I was gonna say, like, the passive conflict resolution is, which I don't know if it's necessarily passive, but it's, hey, we're gonna take a break now, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however much you wanna call that break, and you give the players a chance to breathe. All right, you just call a break. Hey, get your food, get your snacks, go to the bathroom, do whatever it is that you want to do that. All right, because in this case, we had two strong personalities clashing,
Hmm.
but it was over something so petty and bullshit that it shouldn't warrant calling for a break. It
No.
shouldn't warrant the DM pulling two people into a side room to talk. Which those are instances where the DM, like, I would say there are instances where the DM may, I'm going to throw some shade at this. There are instances where you have weak-hearted people, weak DMs, where they're very sensitive, very politically correct, and something might happen in a game where it triggers them to be overly emotional, overly sensitive about a thing, and they take it personally, or they have some issue with it. Those are instances where a DM should and may pull you aside. If someone does a sexual assault in a game, okay, whether towards another player or towards an NPC, if it triggers another player at the table, the DM might need to step in and say, all right, hold up, take a break. We need to talk. We need to go into a back room or something. Like, we need to do this encounter or whatever this is in privacy, and we'll do roles and we'll do all that stuff away from the table, away from everyone else. I personally don't subscribe to this philosophy. I personally don't do this in my games. If I'm taking someone away from the table to do some roles, that's because they're doing something sneaky, and I may not want the other players to know, because it's a lot funner to have that type of deception going on.
Hmm.
Not because I'm trying to protect someone's feelings and emotions. So I was saying that in that circumstance, that could have been what you did, just because I don't know how well you knew the other guy, but with how well you knew Benefactor, that would have been the better solution of, okay, give these two a moment to break, or you know what? I am going to walk away, so I cannot be tainted and biased towards one player or the other.
The thing is that the other player, I will say, I know that he's kind of a rules lawyer, not to the same extent that the Benefactor is, but he was someone who was very well versed in the rules and in the lore of the universe as well. Although not that I was using that, because we were doing a homebrew world, but yeah, he was a knowledgeable player, and up until that point, I'd never seen him be adversarial towards any other players, to be quite honest. The Benefactor, I know your personality and you are that kind of person sometimes, but that player I had never seen do that, so that
Yeah.
was quite shocking.
Well, I'm not sure.
And I'd been DMing for this guy for a little while. He'd been in my previous campaign as well, so I felt like I had a very good grasp of who he was.
Yeah. Well, like I was saying before about in my Discord, when we had that issue with Benefactor and another player, okay, the other player is used to being a bully, and all he has to do in his previous games was bully people, and they would fold and give him what he wants.
Mm.
So when he was trying to bully and when he was trying to bully Benefactor's mentality came back at him with, okay, let's throw down. And that caught him off guard. You could tell it caught him off guard because then he retreated. He was like, oh, I can't bully this guy. And so he talks a tough game, like, oh, I'll kick your character's ass. Like, I'll win. Like, I'll just completely annihilate you. You're not going to win, dude. And then when it came time to throw down, Benefactor was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Let's do it. This guy, nowhere to be found. He's like, hold up. I thought we were under the impression that this was going to be a cooperative campaign. Like, he suddenly changes the goalpost. He suddenly changes his rules and what he's going to follow by. And that's how this guy struck me in your game is, okay, he's going to die on the hill of it's unlawful to desecrate the dead. But when it came time to actually put up or shut up, he backed down.
Mm-hmm. Well,
turn around and call me a murder hobo out of character, like out of the game. Like, what?
I mean, he was already dead, so it's technically not murder hoboing, but you know,
And he didn't kill anybody.
You didn't kill anybody.
I didn't
You
didn't
do
attack
anything.
anyone. I didn't.
You disposed of evidence.
But I would say, you know, the passive way that you took definitely did cause a minor rift, because I was like, you know what? Since I'm not welcomed here, I'm going to go and have my own adventure, and I'm going to go forward. Screw you guys. I'm getting a carriage, and I'm getting out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all live and learn, to be quite honest, and even experienced DMs are bound to make simple mistakes.
Yeah.
It's fine. I don't hold
Yeah.
you accountable for any of it or anything like that. I don't blame you. I blame that guy. I still blame that guy. Screw that guy.
Well, I gotta be honest, I'm kind of burnt out of topics to talk out, because if we start something, it's going to be another hour, to be quite honest. But I appreciate everybody viewing this and listening to our little conversation either now or in the future.
Let me finish up these chats here real quick, okay?
Okay, sure.
Niraj, my group had the problem of some of the folks being vindictive and wouldn't even let small slights go. Your response has to be measured against personality types involved. And then he says, my group's problems often came from or spilled into real life. And that's a legit problem that can happen at the table. As we're just talking about. All right, so let's wrap this up. You can follow me on Twitter at Feral Jackaran, Feral_Jackaran, Crusader Jackaran. That's my official Twitter. Lady Potato.
I got nothing. I'm still a ghost.
All right. Benefactor.
You know where you can always find me. ChaosRyzen on both YouTube and Twitch.com. And please check the link for what I said about character arcs. It's going to be a lovely night, guys. May you all be safe. And remember, I'm your friendly benefactor. Wink.
All right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, chat, Niraj, Luke Dalton, and I saw you in there, Plasma Gigas. Have a good night, guys.